Interesting. There was a couple of things I'm like, but the rest are all.
Anyway, we went back down to the field. Goldberg was at the end, and I was sitting there like totally fangirling. But then when we meet him, I was like, this is what she was doing.
Like Bernie
Oh,
Sanders.
Goldberg!
That's
Goldberg.
that's what you,
I didn't know who he was. They
Yeah.
just showed me.
Oh, yeah.
Wait,
Because she was like, he was there. He was not late. So we were sitting on the bleacher. Goldberg. Why didn't you text me? I was taking pictures.
let's see.
He knows. You driving me down there by the hand. I didn't. He knows. Trina kept saying, and Goldberg's down there. Dang it! And then Bill Goldberg. I think it's Rick Goldberg. No, Bill Goldberg. Wrestler. Yes, I was like, wrestler. He died. I was taking pictures to my resume, and I know everything.
Sorry.
Wait until I call him up.
No, don't tell him, don't tell him, because he'll be really mad, don't tell him.
Paul is literally like this.
I was.
I would have just walked right up.
I didn't know he was mad. No, he was hot.
They were losing.
And he was cussing, and I was like, I'm not gonna go down there like, oh, hi, Mr. Goldberg. Can I take a picture?
Well, good morning. Good morning. I'd like to call this special meeting to order at 8:31 a.m. Thank you all for being here on this very early morning. And in compliance with the State Government Code on open meetings for this morning's agenda, it has been appropriately posted. I will establish quorum, so colleagues, if you could hit your button. And we will have, Ms. Eaton is out due to a family emergency, and Ms. Stanford is running behind, but she'll be here. So we're going to go ahead before we start with Dr. Gibson. We have one item to discuss on our agenda. So if I could go down to, there is no public comment, just for the record, right, Betty Holmes?
No, sir.
Okay. Consider and take action regarding the reclassification of the Executive Director of Human Resources.
Yes, sir. We're recommending that we move the executive director position to a director position in human resources. It was vacated recently, but before we posted, we wanted to come to the board and see if we could reclassify. Dr. Taganow has taken over. Can you hear me now? Gotcha. Dr. Taganow has taken over that particular area, and she's recommending that we change that to a director position. So, Dr. Taganow, if you'd like to.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. The reclassification of the executive director to a director position would save the district about $12,000. The purpose of this, having had the opportunity to assess the department and speak with the staff, is to focus on some of the needs for improvement, such as recruiting and hiring processes. So what would happen is this particular person or this role, the duties will be streamlined so that there is a focus on recruiting, hiring, and a specific focus for professional staffing. So the duties that would be removed from the executive director position would be things like that have directly to do with employee relations, grievances, Title IX issues and responsibilities, policy and procedure management, as well as compliance training. And then this person would also not directly oversee benefits. So we do have a new job description attached in your materials. So I can answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions?
Here you go, Ms. Ryan. It's on that second page. And the red strike-throughs are the areas that are being added and deleted.
You should also see in your board book just a draft reorganization of the department.
Who would be taking on the eliminated duties? Where would those be reassigned?
Great question. It's a bullet here that I was going to say and forgot. I would be taking over those responsibilities, having been in charge of the departments for some time and there being vacancies and shorthanded staff. I've been working directly with that work with the department already. And so we've been managing, and so those would fall on me.
So you would be taking over benefits, because that's a huge,
I would oversee benefits.
Huge role.
Yes, ma'am. I would oversee benefits. I would not be doing the direct work
Lisa Roberts.
for it. We have a director, Lisa Roberts, who's phenomenal. She
Okay.
oversees that department. I would just be the person that oversees
Gotcha.
that. Correct.
Some of the biggest duties that she would take on is like mediation, investigation, stuff like that. That way it allows that person in charge of professional recruiting to be laser focused in terms of personnel that we're bringing into the district. And then we can share the investigations as a cabinet if necessary.
Are there any additional questions from anyone? The question I have for Dr. Tagenall and for you, Dr. Fields, is giving Dr. Tagenall a greater ability for professional development. I know that this relatively is new, right? I mean, you're doing a phenomenal job, but I mean, there's other experiences that she can glean from other professionals in her field. And is that going to be structured as you go forward?
I would say yes, sir. There's Region 20, but also there's a legal conference that comes along with being responsible for the Human Resources Department, and I know she's looking into going to that as well at UT Austin.
Yes, that's in December. Also, I'm already a member of TAPSA, so already have attended some of those trainings as well, and encouraging my team to also have them build their capacity in those as well.
Dr. Fields and I worked with Dr. Elaine Howard, and when she started, she was relatively new, and she's had a very long and successful career in that area. So obviously, we want you to be successful too, and have a long career here at Judson. So that being said, I have no other questions. Anything else? Okay. Then I move that we reclassify the Executive Director of HR Resources to AP 509.
Second.
Let's go ahead and vote. Okay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now, for the reason we got up this morning, I will say that Dr. Gibson carries a great reputation for his work as a superintendent, but I won't give too much of a background on your part. I just want to say thank you for being here. I've had one conversation with Dr. Gibson, so he's really bringing his expertise to help us talk through some of our goals from the district as well as superintendent level. But Dr. Gibson, please introduce yourself to the board and to the cabinet.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good to see you again. We were just like, okay, we know each other somehow, and so, yeah, it was a decade of Randolph Metrocom lunches.
Northeast Partnership.
Northeast Partnership, that's right. It's where we bumped into each other. So it's good to be in here, and it's good to see real breakfast tacos rather than what we call tacos in North Texas, which are not tacos. So I'll take one with me on the way out, because I'll take one for my wife. Actually, she misses them as well. But one of the things I probably wanted to talk about just right off the bat, or in way of introduction, and maybe some things that you don't know about me and that the superintendent doesn't know about me, but I started out as a student teacher in Graham ISD, where we now live, kind of back where the family ranch is, and 11 years later, I was the superintendent in SEUC. So, and sometimes in these small and mid-sized districts all over the state, you can be there for 50 years, and the window never opens, to have career advancement, so you have to leave. And truthfully, I didn't want to be a superintendent. I mean, I'll just say that I think I was just the last man standing, and we had 25-year superintendencies, and then we just had a series of a couple that used it as a springboard to go to another superintendency. And I'm just keeping it real here. Like, I just happen to be there right at the moment. It's like, we're not doing another search to have someone be here 2 years and go to whatever ISD. And I literally had taken my family on a fancy vacation in a little pop-up camper to Fredericksburg, Texas, 3 kids and a pop-up, at a state park. And, these were kind of emerging. They were bigger then and weren't quite as fancy, but I got a cell phone call, which now I wish I wouldn't have had a cell phone. Yeah. But it was the board president that said, you need to come back. There's a board meeting tonight and we're naming you interim superintendent. And truthfully, I became the superintendent there about 8 months later, but that's how I became a superintendent. And I left my wife and 3 kids in a pop-up, and went back and showered and got knighted. And then I went back to the camper for a couple of days, and then we packed up and went home. And so I was superintendent for 23 years. Starting that next year. And so 3 or 4 years in Graham, and then 7 years in Crowley ISD in South Fort Worth, and then 11 years or so in Schertz-Cibolo, I guess stopping maybe 3 years ago. It's unbelievable that time. Whatever the day was that the coronavirus started, that was the day of my reception. Now, I have been accused of bailing out, but I announced my retirement a full year in advance of that day, and it just so happened that it hit them. But probably one of the main things, 2 things I would like to say, because today, we're talking about the Board of Trustees, and we're talking about the superintendent, and we're talking about what I'll probably call regularly the senior leader team. And I think, and I'm a retired superintendent, so if I'm a board member, I'm thinking, maybe he worked with the board for 23 years, or boards and board members for 23 years, but it's still through a superintendent's lens. And so if I was a board member, I might kind of have my guard up, that this, okay, fair enough, the superintendent's here, to that end, I want to tell you 2 things. So one was, when I became the interim superintendent at Graham, I was 31 years old, or 32. And yes, I had superintendent certification. Yes, I was working on my doctorate. And truthfully, I just kept going to school so that they didn't make me a coach. And if you want to know the truth, because as long as I said I was working on, my master's or my superintendent certification, I didn't have to be a coach, because I was a composite social studies. And if you're in a small district and you're a composite social studies, you're coaching. And I drove a bus. I had to bargain with them, so I drove a bus and I worked on my master's. That's how I stayed out of being a coach. My dad, by the way, was a head football coach and athletic director, so I lived that dream through him in my formative years. So all to say, I had the book knowledge, I had the rapport with the staff, I had the rapport with the board. I had 0 skill on working with a board. I say 0. I've been the deputy superintendent, so I got documents ready for the board. We had none of this, but I got things ready for the board meeting, but not this dynamic. So what was really interesting is my dad had retired as football coach and become an insurance guy. Shocker, and he was running an insurance company in Breckenridge. And if you're familiar with that area, it's 30 miles away, rivals, and all of that. And the Brazos River runs right, between us. So I actually our family ranch is on the Brazos River between Breckenridge and Graham. So I actually crossed the bridge and went to work in Graham, which was almost evil, and my family who went to Breckenridge High School. But my dad was the board president in Breckenridge when I became a superintendent in Graham. And every Saturday, I did what any respectable 31-year-old would do. I went out to the ranch to help him, do some work, to do whatever. That's right, pick up the heavy stuff is what it felt like. But what I realized is, like, I just got so much knowledge from him because he has a school background, but then he's a school board president, and I'm like spouting off what I'm learning from book learning. Those were his words, not mine. You know, book learning, the theory of this stuff. And then he's just, you know, like, son, if you go into a board meeting and say those words, I'm telling you to come off your high horse and speak, you know. And truthfully, having him those first 4 years as a sounding board were like probably like one of the greatest things that could have happened to me as a superintendent. And you know, I can think of little things that he said, but, you know, one that really sticks in my mind is if you don't tell us what you think as superintendent board, what you think we need to talk about or think about, then we're going to think about and talk about anything we want to. Because in the absence of a framework, and he's a football coach, you know, so it was all about that's right, the plan, the book, the spiral from day 1 to day 365. There's a plan for every day. If you don't help us know where we are in the plan, then we're just going to go, and at that time there wasn't Facebook, you know, and all that. We're just going to go with what we hear at Dairy Queen. That's what he said. Now it's accelerated because serious. I mean, like, yeah, Dairy Queen was the original Facebook. I don't know if y'all know that. That's where all the information was exchanged. And same principle applies. You know, truth doesn't have anything or maybe even much to do with it. It's just what I think, you know. But anyway, y'all get the idea. So just that concept of like, because I can tell you as a young superintendent, and I don't think we get adequately trained for this in school with board dynamics. I really do, because those professors never were a superintendent, or sometimes superintendents teach classes. Sorry, and you get a little snippet from someone on this board relation, but it's not. I think, and then what little training maybe we get afterwards, words are used like manage the board. Now think about that. It's almost like the same, if I Googled how to take care of my horses that I now own or cows, it would be manage the herd. I'm serious. This is not about the board managing the superintendent or the superintendent managing the board. It's about this synchronistic relationship between the two that's harmonious. And it doesn't mean that there's not accountability in there. I'm not talking about being buddies. I'm not talking about being friends. I mean, you can do that. That's not what I'm talking about, but you can do that if you choose to. It's just about harmony in the system. Otika, for 23 years, when she was home, when I left every morning, said, if you and the board sneeze, the district gets a cold. That was her reminder to me we have to be in complete harmony or the district's going to get a cold, right? Because they see us, okay, just like a little, even if it's the tiniest little snip at each other, oh, well, you just justified me. Like when that little snip cascades 4, 5, 6 layers deep, it can become something really, really bad. And so this is not, I'm not your counselor. We're not going to get up and do kumbaya and grab hands with each other. It's about building systems that the people around this table, and I was so glad to hear that the senior leader team was going to be here this morning, and I wouldn't have said do that. I would have just come to deliver whatever y'all wanted, and I'm fully prepared to do that today. But then when the senior leader team was coming, it was just like great, because we'll talk in a little bit about the strategic team and the tactical team. That's the board, and that's your senior leader administrators. One is the strategic team, the other one is the tactical team. One sets a clear vision for the mission that we're going to accomplish. The other one delivers on it and reports back to the strategic team on the progress of tactics. Then the strategic team gets to ask questions, and they should be strategic questions. And it's things like, are we making progress? How do we know? How does that data line up with this strategic objective that we've adopted, et cetera, et cetera? So that's part, Mr. Macias, of what we'll do today is talk about that. Now, I want to, well, let me do one more thing on board awareness. Some of you may know this, and I think this is really important because that's actually where a lot of this information came from. But about halfway through my tenure at SCUC, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the teacher retirement. I know you're familiar probably with the teacher retirement system of Texas, but it's like the 7th largest pension fund in the world. And it's the pension fund that my dad, my mom, I'm on, my wife's on, several of y'all are working. Okay, you're retired. Okay, retired. All right, retired education.
She just retired.
Oh, okay. I still have connections. Yeah, thank you. I know people. Yeah, I can text somebody. We can talk. I'm not promising anything, but I can text somebody your name. But I decided, and it's a weird thing, you have to run for a statewide election from school district people. Then the top 3 vote getters' names are presented to the governor, it was Greg Abbott, and he had just got elected. In fact, I was delayed like 5 months because he didn't even have an appointment director. He couldn't decide who was going to be the appointment director to actually appoint me, because you're ultimately appointed by the governor after you run the election. It's just, it's bizarre. So I thought you just won the election and you were on, and then I realized they were background checking you, so I was like, and I had 3 junior high and high school children, and I'm like, everybody's Facebook, Insta Snap, like shut it all, just shut it all off. I mean, like completely off, like delete. We're gonna do new anyway. So everybody's Snapchat went away, and then we reloaded it all back later. And so I got on the appointment, and I felt like I had a mandate from a lot of the primarily superintendents around the state that said, we'll help you get elected. The election part of it, not the appointment part of it, but the election part of it. Brian Woods, Northside. You're about to get a bunch of votes, but these are 2 or 3 things. And Brian, that's the right thing for Dr. Woods to say. Here's 2 or 3 things that need to be worked on. We'll get you a bunch of votes. Mark Henry at Cy Fair. These are 2 or 3 things that need to be worked on, but we'll get you a bunch of votes. So my point is, like, I came in with almost a mandate from some people, that got me a bunch of votes to get me to the position to be appointed. And yes, I felt like I owed them something for that work that they did. I absolutely did. So I think the way the executive director now describes it is I rolled in hot. Okay, so I rolled into the TRS board hot. And lots of questions, and I mean, like, I'm going to hit right at the thing, my mandate. And Joe Colinetta was, maybe still is, I'm off, and I'm detached pretty well from almost everything except the ranch and doing board work on Saturday mornings during the eclipse. That's what I do now. But I'll never forget that I asked a lot of questions, and I did roll in hot to that board. And so there's it's filmed like this, and like we're on camera, and people are texting me. My mom is texting me. You tell him that, and I finally have to just turn my phone off. I can't let my mom be texting me during the live stream of a board meeting. And so I went over to get a coffee, because we were in a marathon meeting, and Joe Colinetta, one of the financial advisors that had made I'm sure big donations to Greg Abbott to get on there. He deserved to be on there, but y'all know that's how that works.
That's how it works.
Okay, all right. I didn't want to shock anyone, but that's how that worked. But Joe wound up being a good friend of mine, and so I'm getting a cup of coffee. I've been on the board 3 months, 2 meetings, and he said, Greg, you have a lot of really good ideas. I'm like, wow, kind of like my chest pokes out a little bit, right? And he says, as a matter of fact, I can't think of anything that you've brought up, that I don't completely agree with. So it's like, I even got my chest out further. And then I'll never forget, he was stirring his coffee, and he put the stick down, and he turned around and kind of went by me, and he said, "The way you're delivering it sucks." And then he just went and sat down, like right in my ear. Right, this is a guy that's been on the TRS board for 14 years, and so here I'm going back to my chair, like looking at him, and he never even looked up. Like he just let me stew on it, the whole. So what he was trying to tell me, we had a great conversation that night, is if you want to make a change here with something, it's the long game. You don't roll in here hot to people that have been doing this for 50 years and board members that have been on for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and just like all of a sudden, just because I'm a superintendent in some district, the 7th largest pension fund in the world is going to change. So, and I'll never forget, we're eating dinner, and he said, what do you think are the issues? And we started, now I will tell you this, the TRS did not, they had the required strategic plans that were required by statute, like they had to just list out some goals, but they didn't really have a strategic plan. They were taking care of the pension. I have never doubted. Like those people are smart. Like the investors, like it's as good a team of investors probably in the world. I think that one of my issues was that people get paid late and they don't get communication, and that's scary. To be depending on something, and but so how do I get at that in the absence of specific objectives that are written to try to get at that the whole board and the whole senior leader team are in agreement on? So my tenure there was basically to form a strategic planning committee that constantly set measurable targets and then reported on those measurable targets back out to the board. So rolling in hot turned into forming a strategic planning committee of the board that monitored progress and reported out. So that lesson that I learned from that rolling in hot and what I thought I was going to do and how I was even going to go about doing it, because you think about it, I would drive from Schertz to Austin. I'm on the phone the whole way, being a superintendent, like tell them do this, tell them do, it's like, like it's just like, they did what? Are you kidding? Okay, like it was just, and then I have to just like take a deep breath. It's 10 in the morning, and I'm walking in the building, and the second my foot crosses the threshold, I'm not in the tactical role anymore. I'm in the strategic role, and it was hard for me. And truthfully, I shared some information kind of as background stuff that we may or may not look at in a little bit. Most of all of that came with me, the origin of most of the training materials that we're using now at Mo Casey came from me trying to figure out how to be a better board member for TRS. That's where it all started. And then I had Robert Westbrook and Scott Harrod and Jerry Perkins and George Ricks, all these board members at SCUC that knew I was working on that, and they were listening to me about why I was doing that, and I just feel so honored that they said, well, if that's good for you on TRS, then that's good for us, so let's just play with it. Let's see what we can do. So it almost became like an experiment of good governance. And so we just started with it, like 2 years into my tenure there. And I think I told you, Mr. Messias, I really did not intend to stay there 11 years. Like I intended to stay there 5 or 6 or 7. But we had set a 4-year plan when I arrived with clear objectives that the board and the superintendent and the senior leader team were all on the same page. So we finished that 4-year plan, and they wanted to do another one. And I was like, okay, I'll get, in my mind, I didn't tell them, but in my mind I was thinking I'll get started and I'll exit, And then in the middle of that 4-year plan, I got into the work. It was just like, I can't. Okay, but I'm just going to, I got to finish this. Like we've got this, thing going forward. And then I really was feeling like I was finished after that next 4-year plan. And the board talked me into staying at least 2 of the next 4-year, which turned into 3. And so anyway, that's how I wound up there 11 years. then it was interesting, they handed off that next 4-year plan to the incoming superintendent and said, you don't have to develop a strategic plan, just finish this one, then we'll talk and you do the next one, which he called me, he's like, they're telling me I don't have to do a strategic plan? And I was like, yeah, Clark, we got one. Like, it's operational, like, you're good, the board understands it, they understand it better than, as well as anyone, they understand what's in it. Okay, so, yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate that introduction, it's very thorough. I wanted the cabinet and the board to know a little bit more about you, and I'll just take a few minutes and have us introduce ourselves to you formally, so you know who is in the room. Obviously, I'll recognize that Ms. Stanford made it in.
Hello.
Good morning.
And so we'll have everyone introduce themselves, but I will say that the appropriateness of you being here, the need for us to reevaluate what our long-term district goals, as well as align them with superintendent goals, and then start thinking strategically. There's, by no means do I expect we're going to walk out of here in 2 hours with all of the answers, but certainly we will get started on the process, and that's the expectation, that we will have that information and insight that you'll provide today for us and continue to work through that. It's important, obviously, as any board, to have well-established goals, either district or superintendent or strategic, that we know where we're headed in. And this board has done that in the past, but we're at a point where we need to reevaluate those things. So if you don't mind, if you just would take 1 minute, just your role and how long you've been with the district, and that way Dr. Gibson has a perspective on us. And Ms. Ryan, I'll start on your end, down with you.
Oh, Monica Ryan, board member, elected in May, but I'm a mom of 5 daughters. 2 of them have already graduated this district, and 3 of them are still here.
Very good. That's May of 2023. Right?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I came in hot.
I was going to add that.
I know, I came in hot.
I was just like looking at a point on the wall back there. So, yeah, I was
Stephanie Faulkner, I'm District 2. I'm recently retired. I've been on the board 6 weeks now. I was appointed when there was a vacancy. I taught 31 years, but I'm now representing the little city that I grew up in. I went to all the schools I represent, or 2 of my kids graduated from the district. My grandmother has a library named after her in the district. So
Very nice.
I'm very vested in being here, and so.
Thank you.
Oh, that way.
Oh, I'm Nicole Taganod. I'm the Chief of Communications and Talent Management. I student taught here. This is my 19th year in Judson, my 20th year in
Wow.
education.
Outstanding.
Mary Duhart-Toppin. I am the Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. Been in Judson since 2001, so that's 22 years and almost 25 years in education.
Wow.
And grew up from the classroom in Judson, from the classroom up to where I am now.
Very nice.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Davis. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for Business Operations and Innovation. I've been with this district since 2017, but my 25th year in education.
Good to meet you.
I'm Rob Fields, superintendent. Graduated from Judson, came back in 2007 as a principal at Wagner, and in central office as an assistant soup and deputy soup, and was appointed as superintendent in May of 2023.
Very good.
Jose Macias, board president. This is my 4th term on the board. Started in 2010. Had a hiatus for about 18 months as a trustee for Alamo Colleges, so I saw higher ed from that perspective. I didn't arrive into this area until 2002, so it's been a little over 20 years I've lived in the community. But my wife is like your wife. She'll text me. She's a graduate of Judson, and my daughter's a graduate of Judson, so this is where they've been their entire life, and it's good to be here.
Yep. Good to see you again.
Ms. Stanford.
Laura Stanford, and I was in the campaign along with Monica at the same time, so I came in May from campaigning to be on the board. I've lived in the district over 30 years, taught school many years ago, and for the most recent history, I've been in the mortgage industry as a loan officer. And I was really excited to be on the board. I have a nephew in the district, and he's at Judson High School.
Very good. Good to meet you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Paula Johnson. I have been with the district since August of 2022, but I am a Judson mom. I've lived in this area for over 16 years. This is my 29th year in education, and I taught in Sci-Fair, and I taught under Brian Woods, well, actually Dr. Folks.
So every name I said.
Every name I was like,
ago.
yep.
Okay.
Math educator turned advocate. So my title is Chief of Student Advocacy.
Very good.
And so I still have 2 students in the district and 1 graduate from Judson High School.
Very nice.
And my husband also teaches in the district.
Thank you, ma'am. Kristen Saunders, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
26th year in Judson, 26th year in education. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Elementary.
I had told her it's so good to see her all grown up a while ago. She was in a class I taught.
Yes.
A little, we won't say how long.
No, we won't
It
mention
was a while
that.
back.
Yeah, I'm super happy to see you here. You've always been a charismatic, remarkable speaker, and I'm super happy you're here today.
Well, I hope it's the charisma is helpful. I think I'm finally getting paid for talking. Yeah, my mom took a little bit off my hide for talking, growing up. But I want us to also, and I think you remember when we talked in class, it's about the system. It's about the system. It's about the system. Anybody can do one great thing on one day, one time. Can you replicate it 1,000 times? And get 1 yard of carry, 2 yards of carry. Okay, so anyway.
Yes.
Good to see you
Yes,
again.
sir.
Hi, Suzanne Kenoyer, retired from Judson in 2013 after teaching here for many, many years. Got mad, ran for school board, and joined in 2017, and so 6 years on the board.
Everybody runs for a reason, right?
I'm Lacey Gosh, I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Technology. I have, 6 years cumulatively in Judson, and then I left and came back. 3 years in my current position, 23 years in education.
Very nice.
And a school board member in Navarro.
I am a school
Are you
board
really?
member for Navarro ISD, yes.
Which you just hired, no, not Navarro.
We did, we hired a new superintendent
Was it from Camel?
in May of 23, or April, I guess.
Who did you?
Mandy Epley.
Yeah, from Camel. That's right. Okay, I was right. That was the connection. I knew that it was somebody from Camel. Okay, very good.
My name is Jenny Rodriguez. I've been on the board for 6 years. I have also worked in education, was a teacher for 10 years, and worked for an education nonprofit for the last 12 years.
Very good.
20 years in education.
There are a lot of years in education around this table.
That's one thing you'll notice, that there's just a lot of experience, a lot of passion,
Yes.
and a lot of desire to see some things happen in this district as we go forward.
All right, are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay. And one thing related to that, because I think sometimes, my dad helped me with this because of his exit from education and then going into the business world. He and I think correctly told me that we have a tendency as educators to just get in an echo chamber and use our lingo and use our acronyms and just ignore the rest of the world. And he said it just makes people mad. So you can lose the game before you ever start by just getting in the education echo chamber. And then I think one of the things I'm trying to say with that is the beauty, I think, of an elected school board is this sounds like a cliche and it sounds a little Pollyanna, but I'm looking at the rest of our democracy right now and scratching my head a little bit right now. But I truthfully, if it weren't for locally elected institutions actually kind of getting the stuff done, our democracy might be in bigger peril, than it is. Now, this is a bad day to say that when we can't get a Speaker of the House elected. Okay, but we're going to have a positive presupposition that they're going to get that worked out. But when I go to that place in my mind that's a little scary to me, I just think about locally elected counties and cities and school boards just kind of looking at that and rolling their eyes and just getting the work done. Just getting stuff done. So then the beauty of it to me is it doesn't have to be an educator that serves on the board. And at first, when I was a brand new superintendent, that kind of bugged me a little bit, like, they don't know. What? But that's the beauty of it. It's the community's lens that we're listening to. And I think to have a blend of educators and past educators and non-educators is a perfect blend to me. I think if you get overloaded with one or the other, sometimes, it can go that direction too much, right? So a couple of things right off the bat. I am not here to tell you how to think. And this is mainly to trustees, but I might try to tell the admin team how to think. But the trustees, I'm not here to tell you how to think, but I am here to tell you what I think you should think about. And that'll be what we do today. And then I know on a good day, public education is hard. And the best environment on a good day is still hard. And at the very least, what the strategic and the tactical team can do is to try to work on harmony between, this is 4 or 5 pages in the packet, but to try to work on harmony between these two roles. Now that packet, Mr. Macias and trustees, is basically just some background reading that I might reference here and there, and depending on where we wind up at the end of this, it's material to take with you. And you said something a while ago that I think maybe opened a door to something that maybe I'll just go ahead and say right now. I was going to wait, but now I want to give a little background information. I want us to talk very candidly with each other about where we want to go, and I'm just going to call it goals, because that was the email I got that said goal setting. If there's a determination in a couple of hours that we want, and it's 9/11, so if there's a determination, I'm going to say by 10:30, after we have a conversation here, that we want to consider a process of a few steps to achieve this goal setting, then we'll just kind of set that timeline out, talk about it. I'll head home, y'all go out and look at the sun or the lack of it, and I'm just going to say it, no charge for today, and then we'll build a plan. Well, all I'm saying is we're trying to figure out what the plan is. Okay, so this is just like us figuring that out. If in an hour and 15 minutes, you want to, what was emailed to me, set some specific targets today based on existing documents, give me 30 minutes and a yellow notepad and I can have that done. I'll send you a bill for today and I'll get in the car, go out and look at the sun. But is that all right with you, just to make because I heard something a while ago about let's make a determination about how we want to go about doing this.
My preference, and naturally this is again where we get feedback from my colleagues as well, because as a team we work together on our expectations. But my expectation kind of tempered it a little bit, knowing that the probability of coming out of here with really distinct goals is not as probable. But we certainly have to have the conversation, because among us, there's already discussions about trying to obviously identify clear expectations of our superintendent, but also to use the opportunity to look at things strategically from a district level and make sure that the alignment between what we like at the district level really lines up with supporting the superintendent in our evaluation. I do see in my mind a continuance, as you mentioned, in terms of more work being done in this capacity. But, it's really open in terms of my interpretation of where we'll end up. And so obviously, if there's any additional feedback from any of my colleagues, I welcome that so that we can give you a perspective on what we'd like.
So let me thank you for that, because so we're aligned now. So trustees, is it okay if we talk for probably 45, 50 minutes about some key components, and then we just put that to the question? Or do we want to just set some? Now I have, thank you, staff provided me with arguably what your existing goals are, okay? All right. And what, probably the best way for me to even start this conversation is I'm being called right now, and I intended to maybe do 10 districts, and I think we're at 170 right now.
Wow.
Okay, so we hit something right. I think what we hit right is that most districts either have no strategy or too much strategy. Like there's nothing in between. It's either like, help us write some goals. Now, you all might just, this is a judgment statement, so I might be wrong. You might have too much strategy. Like I'm looking at a lot of different documents, and there's probably a district improvement plan somewhere, and there's maybe even some other stuff on the website. Okay, that's a lot of strategy that on any given day, the senior leader team is trying to calibrate their work towards it, and they don't know which one to put an anchor on because there's not enough time in the day to actually execute on that. That's actually just a monitoring calendar, which I love. I love the monitoring calendar, by the way. We will have a monitoring calendar if I have anything to do with it. And this appears like you went through LSG. I think that's great. I think that's phenomenal. This works harmoniously and synchronistically with LSG. I would add one caveat to what you learned through Lone Star Governance, for those of you that were part of that I get that they're saying that it's should all be about student focus, and your mission is students. I believe strongly that you should also have strategy around staff. Like I can fix your STAR scores tomorrow if y'all want to hire me to do it. There's only one caveat, and you're not going to like this. You don't have to, you can't hold me accountable for how many teachers quit next year. Right? Like I can get it fixed. Like we can go stomp on the gas and get it fixed, but then 85% of our teachers leave, and what did we, so it's this, we have to figure out this balance. It's right, it's almost like a dance. Like who's leading, who's following, who's leading, who's following. It's just a constant. So that's what I like to call it, the dance between priority 1 and priority 2. So that we can do enough, we can push enough and get student outcomes increasing, but not so. Now, the only way to hit this dance right and get in sync with each other is to be clear about what we're trying to accomplish with staff satisfaction, engagement, and capacity building. I mean, with measures, strong measures that this team can look at and say, we're on track, ooh, red flag, slow down. But the only way you can do that is listen to staff on a regular basis, which means basically either quarterly or semester quick surveys. We say, let's survey staff. We give them 100 questions, and they say in their mind, I'll never answer another survey for the rest of my life. We need like 6 questions on the computer, fast, quick feedback, and then we, as senior leader team, we need to be able to monitor and adjust. So let me do this, and I had written down some rhetorical questions. So let me ask them. These are rhetorical, but if any trustee wants to comment on these, feel free. But you were. Like we came into board roles hot. We've already said that. So we were elected probably for some mandate, like something energized us. Joe Colanetta, right after that night at dinner, after he told me that I suck, which hurt, he said, you were elected and then appointed to be a good decision maker, not to deliver those 3 or 4 things that those 3 or 4 very powerful superintendents think that you are here for. We're going to make 1,000 decisions in 7 years. You're 7 years on the board. If you're only on 7 years, maybe not 1,000, but 500. And the people that elected you and appointed you, at the end of the day, they want a good decision maker based on whatever information is being presented at that time. So the rhetorical question is to trustees and maybe to the cabinet as well, or senior leader team, are you a good decision maker? Like that's something and And how do you know? You can say, yes, let me get my elbow good and loose and get my hand back here so I can pat myself on the back. But how, am I a good decision maker? That was the question as a TRS board member once Mr. Collinetta kind of set me straight. Am I a good decision maker, and how do I know? How do others know if I'm a good decision maker or not? I don't see anybody's body language acting like they want to add anything to that. So I'm going to ask another rhetorical question. How many people are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and there's one missing, is that right?
No.
So really your board, so you have a senior leader team of 7 and a board, well, I'm sorry, of 6, 7 including the superintendent, is that right? And then
It's 7 and 7. It's 7 and 7.
Okay,
We're
so it's
missing one
15?
of each, yes, sir.
Okay, so you really have, I hear a lot about Team of 8, and I think Team of 8 is critical. I think it's almost as critical the team of 15. Because if there's not this connection between that gentleman and that staff aligning, it's going to be nearly impossible for him to. And when I got to SCUC, it was all about the board and the superintendent. I was like, let me bring some of these deputies and assistant superintendents in here. Like, because if we're not, I'm having a meeting all day tomorrow to try to untangle what we're, like, let's just get around the table and have conversations. Now, the key is the reason they were anxious about that, these 2 roles were all mushy when I got there. There was not clarity about these 2 roles. And so there was some anxiety about, deputy superintendents acting like board members acting like deputy superintendents. So that was fair enough. I got really good feedback, and that's where this started, actually. Now, this is Military City, USA. You couldn't throw a rock and not hit an Air Force lieutenant colonel in our boardroom on any kid. Okay, so same? All right, okay.
Lieutenant
All right, we
Colonel.
had Army on the board as well. Okay. So in your role in Army, I'm generalizing here, but lieutenant colonels are the tactical role, right? Like mission, is that fair to say? Like mission comes.
Yes, more tactical, yes.
That's right. So this mission, and you probably sat there as lieutenant colonel, just rolled your eyes like, we want to do what? One of the best examples, one of our lieutenant colonel board members said that they were charged to take a hill. And he was like, up in the air, I can get to that hill and provide air support, but the Army or Marines couldn't get there because there's no water. And they're saying that's only 12 clicks. Well, it's still 12 clicks straight up, straight down. It's going to take 10 days, not, okay, so strategy was set up here from the generals at the Pentagon, generally speaking. But then it's scary. Like, if you don't bring the lieutenant colonels and captains in to say, is this doable or not, you can do something scary. Well, I'm saying that this structure here at the school district is very similar. The board, and truthfully, it's some of this team also helping the board. It's some of the top leadership of the tactical team, this group, helping the superintendent who's in this bar over to the side, get the board to adopt the right 12 to 15 objectives. So if we decide we're going to start that process, Mr. Macias, here in a little bit, I'm just going to tell you the last thing I want to do is a SWOT analysis with the board. I think I want to do it either way. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? What are the threats? At a moment in time here in a little bit, I want to run a SWOT with the board. Because it doesn't matter what direction we go. Y'all were elected to give this team that feedback. And if I'm going to help facilitate, that information will be huge for me. So you can kind of start thinking about what are strengths, what are weaknesses, what are opportunities, what are threats. Because I think we'll run a SWOT here in about 30 minutes. Because no matter what, I think that's going to be helpful information, because that's the strategic team saying, as the tactical team starts to consider developing strategy, we, the strategic team think these are some of the things that you should really, really think about. I personally think with a SWOT from the board and these existing documents, we can get, and let me ask you this, you've been here since May, June, July?
I've been here since 2007, but as a superintendent since May. Yes, sir.
And are there documents from like the community related to the search profile of a superintendent? Or-
Yeah, there's.
Okay, and are those readily available and public? Okay, I actually would put that information in with, because there's some themes in there that are probably informative to us about what the community is desiring. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
And I see some heads down. Does that sound about right? Like there's probably some stuff in there that like we can go find. So board SWOT, existing previous goals, community feedback. You have it in a 3-ring binder over here. Very impressed. Here, she's looking it up right here. Yeah, but that document to me is very informative. And I firmly believe that from those 3, we can extract a first version of what I'm going to call a scorecard that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. Okay, I don't want to. Well, so here's the question to the team of 15, and I know there's not 15 of you right now. But if anyone, anywhere, ask the 15 of you, what are the most important things that you're trying to accomplish in Judson ISD, what would your response be? And maybe that one's rhetorical, but maybe I would like you to just tell me, like where you, in trustees, like where would you even go to try to get an answer to that question?
You mean, what do we want them to be, or what?
No, what's your strategy? And you and I are at a TASB conference, and we're in the elevator, and I'm kind of a smart alecky board member, probably from Houston, and I say, where's your strategic plan? Like, what are y'all trying to accomplish in Judson? You know, like I pop off and I say that.
We all have opinions, of course.
Right.
Well, I've got the strategic plan.
So, Ms. Faulkner, you want to take the first run at it?
Yeah, and there's no right or wrong with this.
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
it just really kind of helps to know what your current perception is of where that is.
Sure.
So restate the question so that I can.
If you were asked a question, what is your strategic plan, or what are you working on in Judson? Like, where would you go to
Well,
find
first of all, I mean, and I just, thank you. I have my notes from the new trustee institute from TASB, but there needs to be certain goals for certain groups of people, but it all needs to mesh together.
Okay.
So me personally, student outcomes are number one, but hearing from the community, safety is number one.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to send students to do this if the schools aren't safe and they don't feel comfortable. The second thing is, knowing that I retired because of things that are going on in education, staff retention is very important.
But you
The
started
strategic
our,
goal is the overall. It's, what I see is the strategic plan needs to come together. It needs to involve the employees, the board, the community, everyone who has input.
Right.
And it needs to be obtainable, and it needs to be laid out in a timeline.
okay, so let me do it this way, and I really am not being a smart aleck when I'm doing this, okay? Thank you for volunteering. Okay, so everything you just said, and by the way, you started on the SWOT analysis, so hold all those thoughts, because that's exactly what we're gonna do. But if I challenged her back and said, okay, put that in my hand, put it in my hand, like, is there something you could put in my hand? One thing?
Not
Is
that
there
we have in the district. You're asking, do we have a
Got
document that does that already?
one thing?
I mean, this is what we have on the website, strategic priorities.
Okay,
That's what we have posted.
and you have a copy with me? So theoretically, that could go in my hand. That's a good example. You pointed at this a while ago. See, and there's no right or no wrong answers. But so like this is what you might put in my hand, these student outcomes.
This is a part. I mean, I would give you a file folder.
Okay,
Because
if it had to be 5 pages or less, like what? I know I did. You're right.
Because if we're talking about a strategic plan versus developing a strategic plan,
Correct.
two different things.
That's correct.
File folder,
Oh, yes.
file folder,
Yeah.
to develop.
Yeah, and so thank you for saying that. There's two ways to think about a strategic plan also. One is a poster that's on the wall and a PowerPoint that's on the website. We're done, check. That is, if you pay someone to do that and you say you want a strategic plan and they give you a poster on the wall and something on the website, they've earned their. We're talking about, I think what I'm hearing from you and what I align my thinking to strategy is around a performance management system, where it's not just one and done. It is what we anchor to every month. How are we doing on these agreed upon objectives? We've agreed on the leading measures, KPIs. We've agreed on what those should be. This team of 15, we've agreed on a reporting calendar. Yes, ma'am.
See, I think that's the challenge, because the strategic plan Laura's referring to is the one we did 5 years ago, and I was a parent on all three of
The
those
committee.
committees that put that together. But that was 5 years ago, and that isn't in play anymore. That's not a document that any of us are using right now, and it doesn't line up to what we have listed out as goals.
Gotcha.
So I think the challenge with 4 of the team of 8 being brand new, literally in the last 4 months, is what are we grounded in? Where are those goals that are all the building blocks to student achievement and student success? Because just a STAR score, it's going off into the world and going back to Converse and Kirby and being a productive human being. What are those, I don't like aspirational as much as inspirational goals that are a profile of what Judson ISD means. I think a lot of us don't feel like we have that we
Okay.
can hand you right now.
Okay. Thank you for straightforward. With yours, I'm going to paraphrase. We have something.
You would find.
But she's saying it's 5 years old. So it's kind of like, and you used to, in the past, you could write a strategic plan for 10 years or 12 years. It's 3 or 4 now. Like the best practices are just 3 or 4. Like it's ridiculous to think beyond that.
And let me just add to that, things change. We had a pandemic prior to, so the evolution of things needs to be reevaluated. And this board has done some of that reevaluation, but again, new superintendent, new board members, it's just time to continue that. But to get in that 3 to 4 year vision of goals. And one thing that I did garner out of my experience with Alamo College that I just want to share real briefly is that they also thought in 3 to 5 years in terms of their goals and objectives, and looked at the growth within 12-month period to that goal. But the goal was, say, 60% college going rate, right? That was the goal, and every movement towards it was evaluated. If we're going to develop a strategic plan, my hope is that we would also develop strategic apparatuses to get to that goal, which I think, when we think in 3 to 4 years, that would be helpful. It's just something I think we can do more of.
Absolutely. This is y'all's.
And I think part of the challenge is we're behind the power curve because we already have a new superintendent. So like strategic planning takes months and months and months. All these community members and stakeholders, and that is a very deliberate 4-month process that I think a lot of us are want to get going in spring to get us set for next fall. But what do we do in the interim? Because he has no roadmap right now of what he needs to do. So how do we start an interim taxonomy of what some goals and performance indicators and some priorities for him to work on until that 5-year strategic plan is in place? And can we get there now and then with a plan on how to do that strategic deliberate planning process, January through May, and have that great deliverable?
Okay, that great question. I mean, or 2 or 3 questions in there. I personally believe if he's been on the job less than a year, and are you doing the evaluation in January? I mean,
that's the goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then a mid-year in first year should be only an assessment of his entry.
And that's what I was going to comment on.
Yeah.
I don't think that I have no idea, because when I applied, there was a 30, 60, 90-day plan on what was going to be done as we come into the position. I too agree that there needs to be a strategic, overarching, aspirational, this is where we need to go. I'm not sure that that's something that we can do just here at the table. There needs to be input from all types of stakeholders. But if there were to be an evaluation, I think it should be on the entry plan. But I think it's imperative that we get the feedback on what the long-range goals should be based on community and stakeholder feedback before we start mapping out, this is what we're going to do. Otherwise, we're just going to have a list of things not too different from what's posted that there's really not a lot of buy-in on.
And I'll add too that right now our current goals, the document in front of you, and that's what we're looking at. And even now that data is delayed. We haven't received it from the state, so we can't even make our evaluation. So everything is just off. But it is an opportunity now for us to really hone in and really broaden our plans and have that strategic thought process behind us.
Okay, excellent, and all good comments, and I think that answered one of your questions. Okay, the other one, and this is in the packet behind that PowerPoint, and by the way, the PowerPoint is there for you to look at or not look at, but I am not going to sit here and click slides at you. So I have a colleague that says, if all you have is a PowerPoint, you have neither. Think about that. That has never left my mind. So, okay, so behind the PowerPoint is what we call a balanced scorecard. And so and this is just a framework, there you go. So your question or / comment a while ago was about what I heard was a performance management system. So not just this stuff is done, but okay. So we think that you start with building that strategic plan in this format, and you can put it on websites with lots of words and pictures and all that. That's fine. But it's really about clarity around 4 perspectives. See, when I look at this, you're right, Mr. Macias, I see a couple, like our staff turnover rate, that's perspective 2. So when you look on here, so perspective 1 is student outcomes, perspective 2 is staff outcomes, perspective 3, the blue, is community outcomes. I haven't looked at this long enough. And then perspective 4 are financial outcomes. We think we should be communicating on a systematic basis the financial desire.
Well, and that's why it feels like those board goals are progress measures along
That's
there
correct. You have-
versus goals, because
Correct. That's exactly what I said.
I'm laughing because I went and pulled up all the honor boards from this year's TASB conference, and I pulled up every single one of their goals and missions, and this, now I'm laughing because this matches what all of those other boards have. Sorry. And I think the only thing missing from your 4 is kind of a recently emerging one, probably, which has to do with school safety and security from both a physical hardening safety and security and a student behavior. And that's kind of a post-COVID / post-Uvalde thing.
This is perfect what you just said. And the reason we don't have safety, and we could put safety as a performance objective, column 2. I think, and if that's where it winds up at the end of this, if this is the direction we go, then that's where it's going to go. But you just said that safety is at least 2 things. You said student perception and hardening of buildings. Well, hardening of buildings to me is perspective 4.
Finance and operations.
Finance and operations. Then student perception is 1. And then I would add there's a staff perception, 2.
Correct.
And then I would add there's a community and parent perception. So then safety becomes either an objective in all 4 of them, or it becomes a key strategic action. In other words, a way we get to this performance objective. Safety, and I would almost put like technology and safety is kind of an underpinning, right? They're ubiquitous to everything we're trying to do. So they're not the objective. They're the support in the action. So you guys are fast tracking this. I'm throwing all my notes away because
To your point,
good.
before you move on, in
Okay.
addition to safety and security, could be the extracurricular, the attraction from the charter schools that brings people.
I have seen more recently, if you want to look at performance objective 1.4, I have seen in that space the statewide increased competitiveness of blank ISD.
Yes, sir.
Like literally and so here, the board is adopting increased competitiveness. The tactical team is trying to figure out what does that mean? And then how do we measure it along the way, and how do we measure it at the end? And then I see in that increased competitiveness, almost every time a key strategic action is extra and co-curricular activities.
Yes, sir.
Like, we can't, that's real, and CTE. Now, by the way, usually 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 winds up being CCMR, which makes sense, right? And then you got a college piece of that, and you got a career piece of that, and you got a military piece of that. And in a lot of districts, the military piece is not that important, but I know here it is. Like, we're constantly looking at how many kids are ready. And by the way, that at graduation, shaking hands, the happiest thing for me is when they were college and career and military. Like those, like when we got the trifecta, then it was just, and I remember one kid, I said, congratulations on having all three, and he said, when I come out of basic, pay grade 2, baby. That's what he said. I was like, that kid gets it. Yeah, that's right. I wish I would have been recorded. Pay grade 2, baby. It was just priceless. So 4 perspectives. The board adopts column 1 and they adopt column 2 after all of this discussion that we're talking about. Whatever that looks like, how wide a net we need to cast out into the community, whatever that looks like. So we bring all that information together, and then the board adopts column 2, which includes some of the stuff that we're talking about. There might be stuff from the 2017 plan that comes forward, but I think we need to listen to the community first and research in those documents and almost consider clean slate, but have those documents in front of us. Does that make sense? Like, I'm saying clean slate, but then I'm saying look back, at these other documents and let them inform us. But then we build out a column 2 that the team of 15 all agree.
But I know we have talked, Board Member Canoyer, there was a lot of time and effort put into this. So I think these need to be plugged in somewhere.
That's great.
I mean, I don't think we throw everything out.
No, we plug LSG goals into these scorecards 2 times a week. Perfect.
They haven't been met.
Correct.
And they were worked, just from hearing, it was extensive.
Right.
So they need to be plugged in.
So my clean slate, back up, generally, but anything that was worked on extensive. And for example, if you just finished, I don't know if you did like a mission or a vision setting. Okay, well, let's just say you did hypothetically. You just finished it. The worst thing we could do is throw it away. That's exactly right. So it just plugs in. We just plug it in.
And Dr. Gibson, I'll add that my vision would be a hybrid. We would create some additional aspects for that goal planning, but we would also incorporate what we went through in the process, because Lone Star governance is right on point with student outcomes.
Correct.
And that is certainly why we're here as well. But I think there's just an opportunity to do an expansion of that to really, but again, with the mindset that we're also setting measurable goals and
that's correct
for the superintendent, so that we can evaluate his performance as well.
So let me, just to that end, to answer that question, if you can imagine a scorecard that is Judson ISD, whatever that looks like, we'll talk about that here in a little bit, and it's built out. And then over here under
progress measures.
Thank you, sir. Progress measures, we have superintendent significant outcomes and progress measures, like we relabel that. We add a fifth perspective, board superintendent relations. That's not the district, this is your evaluation instrument. Okay, so does that, like, this is how simple a superintendent evaluation instrument can be. So we have some so for the next 12 to 24 months, if the board chooses to adopt this, y'all, this team of 15 are going to be building the metrics that align to these actions and communicating them with the board. And then the board is like, yeah, okay, but what if we also measured absenteeism or attendance? Okay, that's a good question, trustee. So we probably want to add attendance to that. So my point is, with superintendent appraisal instrument, this progress measure becomes like not just the measures, but also the actions that you're taking to try to get that stuff moving forward. Then down here, perspective 5, board superintendent relations, and then you just add a column right over here, and every trustee gives 1 score for priority 1, 1 score for priority 2, 1 score for priority 3, 1 for priority 4, and then a score for priority 5, which is board superintendent relations.
I love that idea. I would like for you to clarify then, if we have that down as a progress measure, we've talked about the overarching goal. We've talked about the steps that we're going to take to get there. If you could now delineate whose responsibilities for what in that process.
For achieving those measures?
Overarching goals,
okay.
For achieving the goals,
Yeah.
the role of the board in monitoring that process,
Yeah,
and the role of the leadership team. And
so okay, thank you, sir. So let's go through developing and then monitoring.
Yes, sir.
As 2 separate buckets. I'm going to go back to, as a lieutenant colonel, if given the opportunity, you could probably have helped something that you looked at later that looked stupid not be stupid. If you had been given the opportunity to say, you can't do that in the real world, like you can't do that out on the front line. Yeah. Those people will, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work. You can write all those words you want to write, but
Yes,
that
sir.
ain't gonna work. Okay. So this whole process, that's why I really believe in this team of 15 concept. It is this back and forth between the board and the senior leader team, board, senior leader team, board, senior leader team. So it opens up this constant dialogue back and forth. So initially, now my opinion is this, trustees, and I'm just going to tell you, you have some strategy already developed. We've already determined that, right? We've got some developed. Yeah. Plug that in. Mm-hmm. Do a listening tour that can be one community meeting. We can run a SWOT with community members, compare it to the board SWOT. Then the tactical team, my point with the example of the lieutenant colonel earlier, that tactical team, I believe once your already adopted goals are plugged in, they need to make you a draft of what they think these other objectives might be. Draft all over it. And then there's a session right back here with the board to go through them one by one by one. Well, here's what we proposed. Here's why we proposed it. We did the community meeting. We ran all those SWOTs. You see all this over here that people are telling us we need to. And then I bet that in one pretty quick meeting, the board can basically say, with a few tweaks or whatever, we've got column 2 set. And then Mr. Macias and trustees, I'm going to recommend strongly that the board only adopt columns 1 and 2 and not 3 and 4. You don't adopt those because they need the agility to move quicker. You mentioned the pandemic earlier, like they need to be able to pivot. Now, I'm going back to my dad, looking over fence while I'm driving, but he said, if you don't tell us what we need to think about, we're going to think and talk about anything we want to. So we believe strongly that the tactical team should give a scorecard report. This is very similar to Lone Star governance in a lot of ways. should give a scorecard report every month, 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever the board decides.
The monitoring calendar.
And that's the monitoring calendar. And Mr. Westbrook wanted it to be front end of the meeting. He even wanted it before public comments, which I was like, Mr. Westbrook, I don't know, that kind of feels like gamesmanship. And he went, no, whenever they're here, I want them to hear how we're monitoring, the work, and usually.
Active audience.
Well, and that's, he said, I don't care why they're here, but let's let them hear what we're doing that night on that priority. I can't tell you how many times I was going to say y'all don't know what you're doing, but you obviously know what you're doing. So let me just get to my point, which was kind of better, right? Because why are you here? Tell us the one thing. Don't just trash all of us for every reason. What's the one thing that you're really upset with? Okay, but anyway, sorry, I digress. I'm getting a twitch from 23 years of open forums. I apologize. Yes, ma'am. I was going to stop for questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, perfect.
So if you were gonna overlay those two documents, the one with the kind of the roles laid out and then the scorecard, is that what it's called? Okay.
The scorecard.
So you're saying that these first two columns here
Is the streets.
live up here.
Thank you.
And then this and.
Column 3 and column 4 live, and that's a really, I wish I could have recorded that. I would be saying that from now on. I will have it, because she's exactly right. Now, column 5, to extend that very good example you just gave, I think column 5, eventually, after a couple of years, the board at SCUC basically asked, and I agreed, to adopt column 5. Because it gave some weight to it. Now, at first, especially right now, you mentioned the data, it's wonky right now, pandemic. Yeah, what data, that's right. So I would recommend not doing that initially, if that makes sense. But then you start these reports back and forth, and then you're saying, we think the best outcome. Now, you're going to have some outcome measures already predetermined that we're going to recalibrate, make sure they're SMART. The A in SMART is attainable. I would say this stuff can plug in with the caveat that there needs to be a conversation if the A is still right, the attainable part of it. And if it is, then plug them in. So does that make sense that you might adopt column 5 eventually?
And what do you?
And by adopt, so I guess also my question is about develop versus execute, right? And so we may, as a board, I'm speaking, and a team of 15, we may all collaborate in developing that, but then execution is 100%
That's correct. Well,
obviously not on the board.
It's not the board's role to do it, but in statute, you're supposed to hire a fire superintendent, adopt a budget, and you were supposed to monitor management.
Right. Yep.
And see, that's what my dad was telling me. If you don't give me a structure for monitoring management, we're going to monitor it any way we want to.
And allocate the resources to do the stuff and have the policies in place to do it.
That's right.
They're all ours too.
And that's exactly, I was given the short version. Thank you. There's about 15, and they're in BAA legal if you want to look them up. Okay, and you're correct. And the scorecard to me more holistically aligns to what your statutory responsibilities are. Do you follow what I'm saying? I get why this is your mission, and that's why this is really important. But you have some statutory responsibilities that aren't embedded in your performance objectives, I bet. And I think we should have some of those. Yes, ma'am.
So the key performance indicators, or KPIs, or these numbers get from X% to X%. So that's kind of column 5. That's the long-term by 2027 get to 65% or whatever. And then column 4, those are your what we have as our GPMs, where by next year get to 58, then the year after that get to 60.
Okay, great question, and it's not exactly the way I'm seeing it, but you're going to get me there, so thank you. I think column 5 is more of that end of year goal. Now, if we build this out though, what I think would help everybody is we have some columns over to the right. And if this is the 24-25, 25-26, 26-27, 27-28 plan, we make a column, we put 4 columns, 24, 25, 25. Do you see what I'm saying? We put those columns, and then whatever is in column 5 as the result by 2028, we split into 4.
So what goes in 4?
Okay,
Greg,
so
can I-
thank you. Then column 4 are lead measures. Those are typically defined as less than annual. So it's like, what am I looking at? Short cycle assessments, what am I looking at? The reason column 4 is very critical is if you wait until the end of the year to modify your strategy, the world moves too fast now. It's like quarterly adjustments these days. Yes, sir.
I think what would be great, if I could just give an analogy based on an example that we have,
Absolutely.
is column 1 would be, let's say, for HR. Column 1 would be staff recruit and value all staff to ensure satisfaction and retention. Column 2 would be recruit in high quality talent. Then column 3 would be, just for an example, there would be a list of how we recruit high quality talent, but increase the number of job fairs hosted,
Yep.
attended, recruit,
And then column 4, how are you going to measure it along the way?
Exactly. So
Which is,
how
we
many
had
of those
8
job fairs are we
recruiting.
going to do?
That's
How
why we had
many,
8 job-
the line by line, all of the different steps. And then the end result in column 5 would be increase or the number of fills at the beginning of the year from 96%
Yep.
to 99%.
And then arguably, what could that be at the end of 4 years?
Bingo.
Okay.
So
Calling column 5, is column 5 an end-of-year goal? Is column 5 results?
it could,
It's,
Call that column,
I would, outcomes,
outcome.
because the formula here, and it's the same formula that y'all probably heard about in ISO training, and by the way, every time you're talking to me and we're looking at a scorecard, I can give you ISO credit. So if you need that evaluating improvement student outcomes, I can give that to you. Once the ticker hits the 3-hour mark, I can, and even with some background reading. But, so the formula on ISO is an action, is an input. This is in parentheses after each one of these. So input, output, great question earlier, an output is the measure along the way. Input is the action, output is the measure along the way, outcome is the measure at the end of typically an annual cycle. That's typically, doesn't.
So we're talking.
In the context of this, right, this is our outcome, right? The progress
Yes.
measure is BOY, MOY, EOY.
correct.
Well, not
For what we're talking
EOY.
about, well.
Oh, no, I
but
love
when we're
what you're
looking at-
saying.
You know what I'm saying? Along the way, how are we determining, are we on target to get that?
Sure, BOY, MOY, for sure. Now, I'm playing a game
Yeah,
with you.
I know.
I love that you threw it out, because you could, this is something that's interesting, and a lot of districts are doing this right now. They are going to acknowledge that the STAR test is really, really important, but we have some other EOY measures.
Right.
Yes, sir.
It may not be.
report on We
Well,
do
good.
report that out.
Perfect. So see, it
So-
may not be that STAR is the only column 5 thing we're going to look at.
Right.
We're going to look at some EOY data and calibrate it against STAR. I really feel like, I felt good after a decade that STAR became a measure, not the measure
Yes,
in
sir.
SCUC.
Exactly.
It was, we looked at it. We looked at it a lot, but we looked at a lot of other stuff too, to kind of see if the kids were making progress.
But the state looks at it, so,
That's their fault. Y'all got to change that.
no, but we have to,
No, y'all have got to change that. You got to get people elected in there that get their brains out
Thank
of
you.
their, okay. It's wackadoodle. That's my big PhD word of the day for you, and it is politically driven. It has nothing to do with making students and staff better. And
but we're,
now, I'm not saying wholesale throw state assessment out and state accountability, but this concept of assigning
being
one
the
grade,
benchmark,
one
it being
day,
the only thing that we-
is
yeah, it can't be.
preposterous.
Kids are more than one test.
That's
Yes.
exactly right.
What I'll say too is now even the SAT, I mean, their universities are
That's
not even.
correct.
So it's, but what I'm going to say now is it's going to be 10 o'clock. I want to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll go ahead and we'll resume. And my goal is to still be out of here by 11:30. Ms. Faulkner left, but we'll be okay with the clip stuff by 11:30, right? Yeah,
I
okay, because
could
that's
even,
part of the target here.
Peak time is 11:52 apparently.
Okay, well then,
I
11:30
I
is
would
my
even
goal.
propose after the break, and thank you, that if it feels like we may be moving forward with setting a strategic vision.
Sure.
And using the entry plan as if you want to run a SWOT, I would like that information today, and I think it would be good to capture it. I think about 11, we can easily be through that and kind of lay out a roadmap for moving forward.
Well, let's take a
Okay.
quick 2-minute break.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Gibson, we can go ahead and reconvene and get started. I've been very appreciative of your commentary and of the team of 15 and their remarks, and obviously it's important to hear from everyone. So if you don't mind, let's continue.
Could you repeat the answer to Jenny's question?
If you can repeat Jenny's question.
Yes,
Okay.
about where the column 1 and 2 live in. Yes.
Yeah, very great. This is very, very insightful. I'm not saying that just because she's sitting beside me and she's within arm's distance of me, but columns 1 and 2, and I would add belief, mission, and vision. Though the columns 1 and 2, the strategic team owns those columns. So, yeah, the strategic team owns columns 1 and 2. Like they're really the owner of column 1 and 2. They've board adopted it. Like now, input from team of 15. I mean, back, forth, but okay, then what she further went on to say, then columns 3 and 4, the actions and the input measures, that's your tactical team. They're out making that stuff happen.
And I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I'd also say 1 and 2 should be what you refer to as your mandate.
That's correct.
If the community said, this is why we need you there and this is what we need to get done, then 1 should be that. And that's what we should be, the overarching, few buckets.
And those should be
4 or 5
adopted.
Correct.
Correct, absolutely.
And then we develop strategies to get us to that.
Correct. And I want to go back to my father. Now, there are a lot of superintendents or ex-superintendents, old superintendents, that will come in here and tell you that there's a line right here, trustees, and don't go below it. Okay. Do you see this superintendent? I would actually add the team of 15 to that box for bigger districts your size. Like the team that's here. So I'm back to my father. It's not about, yes, you don't need to go down into the tactical work, but you have a right to hear how that tactical work is going.
Correct.
With key performance. That's all oversight. That's exactly right. And not right, you have an obligation.
Correct.
To know how that work is going, in my opinion. And by the way, the senior leader team is the one that has to feed that information to you in a manner that's conducive to you being able to draw conclusions or inference. I'm not talking about 100-slide PowerPoints here. I'm talking about 10-slide PowerPoints. Now, there might be some slides in there on data with trend lines. I'm dead. Robert Westbrook, I forgot to clarify that on one of our first data reports. We showed up with 50 slides, and I'll never forget it. He was like, Gibson, dude, cut it in half. And then yeah.
That sounds so familiar.
Well, but this is what was interesting. Sometimes we had to build the whole thing and then crystallize.
Correct.
Like we had to get it all in there and then think, and we would talk as a group, like what are the most important, if we only could look at 5 measures instead of these 50, what are those 5? So it forced us to have these conversations. Then that's what we shared with the board. And then what was interesting, invariably, a trustee would say, oh, what about this measure, whatever? Well, we got that one too, because we just didn't bring you that one, but it's right here, click.
That's what Dr. Saunders and I joke about. I love backup slides. They don't all have to be on there.
Correct.
There's a couple of us math nerds who like to see more detailed data, but that doesn't mean it has to be up on the slideshow for everybody. It's nice to have those in back only.
This concept of backup slides is it's not just about having more data and more slides. By the way, Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies, almost all of them, according to Harvard Business School, have too much data. So the game is not, do you have enough data? The game is, can you crystallize data to do an action? Can we translate it into knowledge and then translate knowledge into action? That's what the game is. Okay, then I'm adding, can we do that in harmony between these two teams? Not just can we do it at the tactical team level, then can the board even understand what the tactical team's saying? No, I'm saying it's harmonious. It's just like, yeah, your tactical team, those are your experts. Let them go crunch the mess out of this stuff and then come out with the slide deck and then some backup slides on some questions they're thinking board members might ask. Fair enough? Like, that's how this is operationalized. Did I answer? You still look like you have another question there.
No.
You don't?
I'm trying
Okay.
to figure out how to work this thing.
Oh, okay, all right. All right. I can't help you.
So where does column 5 live?
Column 5 is really in both, but I'm thinking eventually the strategic team can adopt column 5. Like those outcomes you kind of have. In some ways, you've kind of already adopted some of them. They're right here.
So those are column 5 items.
Well, pieces of this are column 5 because you've got some by X to Y by Z, 31% to 54% by 2027. That's X to Y by Z. That's the same formula that it's not in this one. So our long-term measures, we believe in this same thing as LSG, X to Y by Z.
It's here in the.
Is it? Okay.
It is.
Okay. So yeah, these are in X to Y. Now, this may be moving to 2028 because if it's 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28.
Yes, sir.
Your Z is about to move to 28. And then we just have to check to see what the X is now and then what's a reasonable Y. And let me say this real quickly. I know, well, y'all did it. The one, okay, we can plug these in right now, but don't let me forget if we're moving forward with this, I think we need to have a good team of 15 conversation if these are attainable. Well, let me not just say attainable, if they're still a SMART goal from the moment when they were set. Does that?
Well, and they were set based on previous star.
Correct.
So with new star.
Correct.
That's
and all of
exactly
the
beautiful.
other stuff.
That's
So-
correct.
So, is it really reasonable for us
That's
to
correct.
expect that kind of growth?
That's correct. But I think it's prudent for us to take these initially and just plug them in where we think they go. Then we have that conversation.
I also want to say this. I've heard Mr. Macias say this several times. He wants it to be something aspirational that we can, how are we getting there? Are we moving towards it? I understand that. That's part of that delicate dance between a SMART goal and an aspirational goal. I get it. I just want us to be cognizant that that's what I've heard come from you.
I've wrestled with that a little bit because obviously the SMART goals need to be obtainable, right?
Yes.
So you need to set really attainable goals. So where I think this may live will be that the board or the district has aspirational goals, but in terms of our measurement and what is obtainable, those are the goals. And I guess, again, I just go back to my lived experience, just so that my colleagues and the team of 15 here can hear this, is that goals are set, and I revert back to the Alamo College's goal. 46% of the Bexar County student population, our population, was college going. But they set a goal of 70% in 5 years. They added the Alamo Promise.
Yeah.
And then they added components like internship programs to pay for these students that are in. They did all these things. But 3 years later, they're sitting about 55%.
Right.
They probably won't reach 70%, which was their goal. But are we going to throw out the administration? No, they're still being accoladed. Their progress is still making an impact. It turns out, obviously, there are societal aspects to reaching that goal that they cannot control. But it doesn't mean they're not being aspirational. So finding space to do that.
Mr. Mercier, that's a really good conversation. And when I was saying what I just said about recalibrating on these, they may be too low. Like I kind of may, but they may be too high. And one of the reasons I stayed for that third 4-year cycle truthfully is that we had hit some earlier than we thought. And so we recalibrated, and then we had missed some, like we weren't, so I didn't stay because of the stuff that was just right for the third 4-year cycle. I stayed for the stuff that we had already hit earlier, and then the stuff that we didn't quite get as far as we wanted to. That's one comment. Then at the end, someone said, well, we should set it at 100% in a district the other day. So let's just make this really clear. So yes, 100% is the ultimate goal, not by 2027, but maybe by 2047.
Right.
I mean, do you see, so we're taking a 4-year slice of that journey and that aspiration to go all the way. Then I see a lot of districts that say they want 100% of everything, and then it's not perceived to be attainable, and it gets stuck up on the wall and it's a poster.
And that's what we don't want.
Okay, and then no.
That is our district aspiration right now. 100% of Judson ISD students will meet or exceed grade level expectations and be CCMR.
Okay,
That's our current typed aspiration, which is a little scary because that's like not attainable.
But that's probably more, to me, that's more like a vision statement than an actual performance objective, if that's fair enough. So I can get that, let's have a vision statement like that. That's the driver to this, but then what's our performance objective? How are we going to do the work along the way? How are we going to measure it in the middle? How are we going to measure it at the end?
Eating the elephant a bite at a time.
That's correct.
Right.
Because my concern is that with pressures from the vouchers, and I agree with Ms. Canoyer, it's a lot of political junk going on, but with pressure coming against us from voucher attempts and, of course, charter schools.
Right.
We need to do better than we're doing. We might have a good reason that we're not, but we have these outside pressures coming in, and we have to exceed better. So that's my concern, is that we aim too low.
That's great. So I'm going to add a comment to aim too low, and so we do need to recalibrate to get it just right, and we need to have a team of 15 conversation to set that. Trustees, is that fair enough? And do you understand why I keep saying team of 15? Because you have experts. Yeah, you got the data nerds. I mean, I can say it because I'm one too.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, right? And we lean into it. Like, you want data? We can give you data. I mean, we can give you as much as you want. But then trustees, you have to translate that into reasonable expectations and a sound bite to share with the community. I mean, let's not be naive. There's a PR component. You're bringing that into this, right? There's a public relations component.
I just want to reiterate. So, for example, goal 1 by June 2022, and then it goes all the way to 2027. So what we talked about, if I'm reiterating correctly, is creating additional columns.
Correct.
So that for 23, we have a number. The next
we'll
column
map
is
out
24,
for
and the
you.
next one is 25.
Correct.
So we create those columns, so it's not just 32 to 65, it's specific
Correct.
per year.
And 32, by the way, there's a lot of research on, a 4 or a 5-year plan. You don't just, typically, there might be exceptions to this, but you don't just divide the delta between those by 4, because there's typically low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better term, to get on the front end of it. So it's usually like 30%, 20%, or 25. But you try to get almost like 40% right up front in the first year or two, or in the first year. You try to really leverage a little bit more, and then it tapers off at the end. Y'all know that. You hit 92 on some number, and it gets harder. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we got from 82
and
to
we do
90.
have those broken down. This is just the summary of it.
Correct.
So when we did that, we did set those interim. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, so now it will, fit.
Now, it could live here, too.
Correct. And okay, and then I asked the question, what are y'all working on? Put it in my hand. Everybody is going to this. Like when we would head to TASB, all my lieutenant colonels wanted a packet of 50 of these. No, I'm serious, because if someone said, what are you working on? They would just, and then somebody would go, dang, I just was asking how y'all are doing. Yeah, I just wanted to know if I really meant.
Just made some other superintendent's life misery
Oh,
because the
that's
board
so
members
funny.
coming in and saying,
No.
we need to do this.
That is so funny. That's what you asked, how one of them got to another district earlier. Yeah, because they're.
So y'all know, I'm all about not recreating the wheel. And so I did research on the local districts, and if you go to East Central, which you know I worked out for 21 years, they literally have this.
They didn't even change the colors on it.
No, they didn't, but the titles at the top are a
You
little
mailed it to
different.
Roland. And
But they literally have this, so.
But it's a structure, and I knew he was getting started, and I was like, dude, you're saying you want a framework. He's like, yeah, it just feels like stuff is coming from every direction. I've got it, and anyway, that's where that came from. Okay. You've obviously asked a really good question because we went down a rabbit trail a little bit, but it was beautiful. I do think, and cabinet members, if you all don't mind, let's let trustees talk right here, but I want you, as I introduce this cabinet members, I want you to just make a note, if you would, of 2 strengths, 2 weaknesses, 2 opportunities, and 2 threats. Now, trustees, y'all can jot those down also, but then we're going to say ours out loud, trustees. So 2 strengths.
In our district?
Yes, thank you. In Judson ISD, what are the strengths? In Judson ISD, what are the weaknesses? Those aren't fun to talk about, but if you don't get them on paper, if y'all say everything's great, then you don't need me, and I'll go look at the sun for a little bit, and then I'll head home. All right, strengths, weaknesses, and then opportunities. Opportunities could be weaknesses, could be strengths, but it's something, I've heard it described this way. It's a big lever that if we get that right, we can get a lot of things right. It might be low-hanging fruit. It might be something hard to get. But it's just like one big lever. Here's an example. You get all the kids reading on grade level by 5th grade. That's a big lever. Do you see? Okay, so like you get that lever pulled, and I don't mean that the SWOT needs to be purely academic, like in nature, student goals. It doesn't. That's a good example, I think. We get,
Communication could be a big one. If we perfect our communication, then even the not so good news that we put out there, people are willing to accept.
Great example. Communication is kind of a big one. Okay, then threat is something that maybe we do or something that is existential to us, but if we don't address it and get a plan, it could fundamentally negatively change the way we do business moving forward. It's a big thing. It's a big rock that might land on top of your head. So I heard maybe a threat mentioned earlier on, voucher and competitiveness and chart, like maybe that might be an example. Okay, fair enough. Cabinet members, you just jot yours down real quickly off the top of your head, and then I want you to, and superintendent as well, and then y'all just listen to the board. I'm going to record the boards, and I'm going to type them up actually and send them to you. So the boards, but this is an opportunity for your part of the team of 15 to hear the strategic role, give their perception. You were elected by the community, right? So you should have you should have, yeah. Well, you were appointed by those that were elected by the community, okay. And that was the appropriate process that did that, and we're glad you're here. All the same, you have a community that you feel is your constituency, the community of Judson ISD, so you're thinking about that perception. Okay, this is real high tech. I'm making a cross in my paper, and
And Dr. Gibson, just so you know, the meeting is being recorded.
Yes.
So if you miss anything, you can always go back and watch
thank you.
the
That's good to
recording.
know. Very good.
It would have been nice to know earlier.
Yeah. So what are the trustees, and how about this? How about, do we want to start here and go around, and then weaknesses come back around, and then opportunities, then that way you're going to say ditto by the time it gets to you right now, but you can start. So we'll start with, let's do strengths right now, just
Canoyer.
strengths.
Go ahead.
Only strengths.
So one of the things I just jotted down, and I'm kind of going back between all of them, is our staff.
Okay. Say a word or two more about staff.
We have long-term staff who stay through lots of seasons.
Yep.
And it's that family feeling that we
Okay.
have with our staff.
All right, very good. Okay, we'll keep rolling around. We're going to just kind of keep on rolling. Strengths.
Oh, okay, we're gonna stay. Something similar to what Ms. Canoyer said, pride, community, identity.
Can't hear you. I don't know. It's not working.
Pride, community, identity. There's a real strong sense of district identity and pride.
Very good. Yes, sir.
I would say that our athletics is a source of pride, and so we're producing excellence at that level and have been recognized by many in the state and country for that. I would also say that our diversity. We're a very diverse district. Not every district looks like ours, and I think we reflect really what the city of San Antonio looks like, and that's a strength.
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
I wrote down legacy, and it bounces off what you say. There's long-term staff. They come back because they attended the schools here. They did their student teaching here. But not just the staff, the students as well. Families stay. They don't move. They stay where they grew up because it's a familiar, that word.
Familiar to them.
Yes, it's comfortable, it's a sense of family. The other thing is, we do have a big community because we incorporate how many cities? I mean.
6 cities and Bear County.
And Bear County, 6 cities and Bear County. So that is something that I think is a strength because we're not located in just one municipality. We have the opportunity to reach out to 6 municipalities and the county as well.
So I'm not saying that it needs to be, but some strengths can be weaknesses. So you could say 6 cities. Yeah, it might be an opportunity for sure. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
One of mine kind of plays on most of the other people, which is I call it our committed core, which is our core staff that keep staying here, the families, our mayors and council people, and this group that is so committed to Judson and is there for us all the time. Obviously, it can be, an issue if we don't keep them all in. And then we've got a history of academic growth. If we go look at what we did from 2018 to 2022, we were rocking and hopping. So we have proven we can do it in the past and keep that line going up. So let's capitalize and keep Judson moving that right direction and that progress.
Very good.
I had similar things, and then the thing I said that's maybe a little different is like I have a lot of confidence in the people around this table, and the commitment and the expertise that each of us brings is something that I think is a strength. We don't always agree, but we like, yeah.
And just to add one other, just to kind of throw in compensation, we are among the highest paid districts for teachers in San Antonio, and I do believe that to be a strength.
Okay. All right, now, so that you,
now I
yeah, you start weaknesses. You start weaknesses.
Okay, I'm gonna say something that might be a little controversial.
No.
Wait, you get to go last. Yeah, no, just kidding, just kidding.
So I think, like you said, I think that weaknesses can also, or strengths can also become our weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I think that pride in community has led to something I've heard people call the Judson way. I think there are times that the Judson way gets in our way. Yep. And so, yeah.
That's true.
Yep, thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
All right, the two I had is our financial efficiency in terms of streamlining the machine, in terms of everything's been Band-Aid finances through COVID and ESSER money and growing from a 20,000 student district to a 26,000 in a very short amount of time. So we're not a lean, mean, efficient financial machine right now, and Dr. Fields and I agree on that, and we got some work to do there. And then I think just communication, it's a new hierarchy all around, whether that's board members talking to their mayors, board members talking to staff and staff talking to teachers and new principals. There's just a lot of new faces and everyone figuring out how to communicate the same messaging across and make people feel valued and seen. We've got some communication work to do.
Yes, ma'am.
My two tied together, and of course, my lens is new, but as a parent in the district, the communication is a little scattered sometimes, and it's hard to find things. But in the lens of a trustee, I'm finding it hard to kind of understand the structure of everything because we have this committee, but I don't know if it's a district or a parent and so I think we need to, our weakness is we have a lot of things going on, but there's no real tying it all together and.
So is that lack of strategic alignment?
I don't know. 'Cause
Well,
I'm
but
new.
if I use those words, though,
It might be, but like I
there's
said,
stuff happening, but it's not.
to me, I'm just speaking to the appearance
Right.
because I really don't know the workings. I mean, I'm sure there are things going on,
I'm going to write lack of alignment because I can
Okay.
tell you lack of
But
alignment
it's also
is
the
in
appearance, because-
99.9% of the organizations.
I'm really big on the appearance and transparency of things, and I'm a researcher. I like to go look for things. But if you can't find what you're looking for, or if
Right.
there's not a defined answer, then it automatically becomes, in the lens, unstructured
Yeah,
and
it's
and jumbled.
interesting, right, I'm trying not to comment on these, but I can't help it here because I want it to go faster, but, like somebody I see on Facebook, they'll say, this doesn't exist, and then someone put the link to the website. Okay, that's clever, but then I'll go to the link on the website, and then I'll see how many links you had to go on the website to get to that link, and if it's like past 3, it's over. That's exactly right. So then, like, if it's districts I'm working with, I'm going, that was clever, but you're 8
Right.
clicks in to find that. That's
So I mean,
not transparent.
mine is just about the appearance and the transparency. It may be structured, but as a new person, it seems like it's really hard to get answers unless you have 5 hours in the day
Yeah.
to get there.
Okay, very good. Yes, sir.
There's a number of areas that are opportunities I see, but I'll just.
Weakness.
I know. But I'm trying to say there's a million weaknesses, but they're really opportunities in my mind, right? But the idea is that I think a weakness is addressing the anti-bullying and discipline issues that we have across the district. I would even say more specific in middle school. And then the other weakness I would say is teacher retention. Even though we're still the highest paid district, it didn't equate to us having overall high retention rates. So that's a problem, and obviously experienced teachers in the classroom mean better results for students. So those are the two that I.
Very good. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I had communication and efficiency. Communication, though, is on a broader spectrum. It's between teachers and administration. It's between community and administration. So it's many different levels of communication that I feel the community doesn't always feel administration responds to them. They make phone calls and don't get return phone calls. I think we're bogged down in structure, maybe. It's so big and things get lost. It's not that the intent that they do, but messages don't get through and people don't feel heard and listened to. So communication is, to me, number one.
Okay. All right, yes, ma'am.
So I could piggyback off of all of these, but one of the things I put was retention and making sure we have qualified teachers. And that's a struggle that everybody has. It's not just pertinent for us, but finding the teachers, particularly in those high need areas.
All right, keep your mic on. Yeah, opportunities.
So I think opportunities for us include, we have a number of campuses who are pursuing innovative structures.
Are you taking notes? Will you email that to me?
Yeah, everyone is.
Sorry, I just wanted to get that transaction done before I forget. I thought you were taking notes. That's very good.
So through Systems of Great Schools and opportunities from TEA, we have campuses who are transforming, and I think that's a huge opportunity for us.
Okay.
And then the other opportunity I have is that we're adopting new curriculums, and while it's a challenge, I think it's an opportunity to really see growth in our students.
All right. How many years in Systems of Great School?
3.
This is our third year.
Okay, third year. Very good. That's helpful. I didn't realize that. I'm talking with them about this process aligning to that process, just FYI, because I think it lines up. So y'all just became something for me to tell them going the other direction.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
I put retention as an opportunity because we did just increase compensation. We have more work to do on that front because compensation alone doesn't do it. But I put that as an opportunity because we're making that effort to reach out.
Is it teacher or is it
Well,
staff or both? Okay.
It's really both, yeah.
Okay. Well,
With an
okay.
emphasis on
Okay.
teacher.
Yeah.
And student performance I see as an opportunity because I feel a great deal of dedication around this table to come at that aggressively.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am.
I would say the biggest opportunities is engaging our staff, engaging the employees that are in the field, that are doing the work in some of our decision-making. And then secondly, I would say an opportunity to create additional pathways for instructional support for our students across the district, pre-K through 12th.
Very good.
My two are, and I already alluded to this, looking at other districts and going back to the communication and the appearance, we have an opportunity to promote our district because we know that we are now going to be competing, and we have always been competing with private schools and charter schools. They always come back because they realize they don't get the services. But if we can put together something that attracts people and we can have everything that the community needs, we can put forth promoting the district, not only for employees, but for families and community partnerships, et
Yeah,
cetera.
sometimes that's called telling your story or controlling your narrative.
True.
Yeah, both. That's kind of
True.
the term.
But I think through this process, we can put out a better product of promoting and saying,
Right.
here's what, here's your input, here's our input, here's what we're doing about it, here's how we're tracking it. Please come be a
Yeah.
part of our family.
Very good.
The other opportunity, I think, and is safety.
Okay.
The safety. It's just, we have lots of opportunities and unfinished business, and I think it's something that unless we resolve it soon, we're not going to be able to attract every possible family and student because that is number one on a lot of people's radar right now.
Very good.
Ms. Faulkner, just for clarity, do you mean safety or do you mean the bond? Or is it because the bond's safety related?
But it's not just the bond, because we have safety checks, we have to hire more police officers, we have, it's an ongoing process. I mean, it's something that you can't just check a box. It's an ongoing, it has to be monitored.
Thank you for the clarity.
And that probably includes the bullying that you were talking about too,
Yes.
because
True.
students feeling safe at
Safety,
school.
yes,
Correct.
safety, the end.
All right, very good. Yes, ma'am.
One of the ones I have is is really our financial situation as an opportunity. We have a pretty fair financial cushion right now. We have the highest per capita fund reserve in San Antonio. We have a bond that we passed. So compared to some of the dire financial situations that some districts are in, we're keeping afloat, which gives us an opportunity to do what we need to do.
Right.
Like, there's things that need to get done. We're not having to cut $50 million in programs because otherwise we don't have the money in the bank. We've got money that if used efficiently, we have the ability to get done the things
So
that we need to get
what's
done.
the opportunity inside that?
That if we need to move around campuses, if we need to upgrade our facilities, if we need to create equity across our playgrounds and life skills rooms and creating that educational equity across the district, we have the funds to be able to do that, and other people may not be in that.
Okay.
So let's get it done. We can actually achieve our goals because we have some resources available.
I'm including that as a strength also.
Yep.
Because it's kind of a strength and an opportunity. Okay. So-
Yep. And then really, it's our community, and some people have touched on some of this, but our community in our schools and our schools out in our community. Because we do a great job of this in pockets, but it's nowhere near what it could be, because we have adults who want to come in and be mentors to kids and be involved in our schools. And then we want our schools out there in our communities to see those adults and see what is possible. Because people don't, it's not like a country music song where you like, as soon as you graduate high school, you drive off into the sunset to never come back.
Yeah.
People stay here, and we have 5 generations who are still all living in Commerce or Kirby or Universal City. So we're gonna reap what we sow. So if we're out there listening to our community, if our economic development committees in our cities are saying that we need more HVAC technicians, more electricians, and more plumbers desperately for our economy, and then we don't have a program that produces electricians, plumbers, and because it would cost money, type thing, we need to listen to the needs of our community, and because they're willing to tell us, and they're willing to work with us, and then partnering with those businesses to create programs that are going to feed these communities. But we have to listen to them. We got to be out there to do that.
Outstanding. Yes.
Mine was very similar to Stephanie's. I said, bring visibility to our district. We need to have a clear point of view on our identity and strengths that we can craft into a narrative that sticks with people. Should I
You
go
said
on
that
to-
very well. Have clear
Point of view.
identity.
Scratch mine and just.
Well,
Identity and
no, but
strength.
clear identity, which drives our narrative. That's perfect. Okay, yes.
Okay, threats is, I think external narratives about Judson, I think, there are the positive narratives about like our football history and things like that, but when I tell people about that I live in the Judson area, they're like, ooh. And, oh, I went to private school because there are people out there who think that, that are choosing to put their children in other educational settings.
So is that?
And I don't think it's I don't think it's accurate about the schools. Like safety in school, I think it comes back to some of the safety. I think there's like.
So we saying misperceptions? Okay.
I would also say that it generally, I'll name plainly, when I have heard that, it generally comes from white people. And so I think that there is like seeing a diverse district, they maybe have some misconceptions about what that means in schools.
So we'll word with it, but it's, no, it's very insightful. So that's misperceptions may be based on cultural lack of understanding.
Right.
That's what I was exactly writing down.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a hard one to follow. I mean, good luck. That's a hard one. No.
Oh, is that your threat?
Yeah.
Just, and let's just do speed round threats where the sun's about to be blocked. You said 11:52, right?
That's what I heard.
Yeah, 11:52.
Well, we've got.
No, it's
Okay.
11:50.
Oh, that's right. It's 10:52. Sorry. It's an hour. That's right.
3 hours later.
I think everybody already said charter schools.
So I'm going to
Will
call
say
that competitiveness.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Competition.
And I think our biggest one is is a lack of trust. Trust is absent, whether that's teachers to their principals, parents to their teachers, district staff to the board, board out to the community, community to the district. Like, there is just a very long history of drama in Judson for all across the board, and it's trying to rebuild that trust, especially with a lot of new people. Again, we got to do better at communication, and the better we do with communication, then we all have to start trusting that everyone's here for the right reasons. If they're not, they can go. But if they're here for the right reasons, let's start trusting that everyone is there for that, and we have nothing to hide. Like, we're an open and transparent district.
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
So I put the legislation, number one.
Let me write that in all caps.
Legislation,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah. Is it okay?
because we're bound by whatever they do. And so with that, coming out of 2 weeks ago, out of the new trustee institute, the biggest thing that I took away was social media can be your friend. Social media can be the death of your district. So get in front of anything. Get in front of it, put a positive spin on it, get it out there before the rumors start flowing.
It amplifies and speeds up
Yes.
good or bad
So
news.
the example, if we have a short time, the gentleman who was the speaker, he came from East Texas. They bought a huge plot of land to put their new school on, blah, blah, blah. Well, they started building the new school and found bones, which then you have to send off, and then you send off, and then, well, they were human bones. Come to find out, it was the imperial sugar controversy. There's a whole imperial
I know,
sugar
right
plants.
where you're
Yes,
talking about,
but he
yeah.
said, because it was a killing ground, because they were enslaving people, the city was taking people, arresting them, and then putting them to work as slaves, and they would die in those fields, and they covered it up. He said, so we were like, great, what are we gonna do now? So what they did was they invented a curriculum, they created a curriculum about the history of what went on.
Yeah.
And they used that to teach in all their schools, and people would go and visit the monuments and things like that. So that's the one takeaway. Social
Yep.
media, you have to get in front of everything before the
Yep.
rumors start spewing.
All right, very good. Yes, sir.
I would say that choice is a threat, and it's not bad, but parents have choices.
Right.
So if we're not going to be high at optimal processes and choice in general. But the other one is addressing our growing economically disadvantaged population. We're at 75%. When I was elected in 2010, it was 55%. So not having the ability to address that could be a threat.
Threat. Very good. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I had compliance as one of the threats, because there's so many things we have to be in compliance with, and it's really hard to lose sight of that or lose track of that, and then boom, we suddenly, ooh, we're not in compliance, and then that hits social media, and we're running to try to fix that.
Right.
So compliance, there's so many things to be compliant with that it seems like it's easy to drop the ball, and we have. And that then looks bad
Right.
to us, for us.
Reputational risk based
Right,
on the
and
way
there's,
that's perceived.
and I had asked Dr. Field, there's so many issues of compliance, so that we have to find a way to get ahead of that.
Right.
And have that in line so that we don't get surprised, like, darn, I thought we were fine, but we're not. And then I also put as a threat discipline and bullying. I see that as a threat to safety. I see that as a threat to student performance, to teacher retention, to staff retention. It affects everything. So we need to be consistent, and we need to address it thoughtfully, but very strongly
Yeah.
to get ahead of that.
Very good. I know you had one that was a ditto, but
I
say,
did.
but
I
say it
did.
again.
The legislature.
Okay.
You know, every year my soapbox is, I'm a single issue voter, and is it, do you support public education?
Right.
And that's what I preach. It's not party, it's person, and you have to investigate. My other threat, though, is the emotional state of our students. You know, and I don't have any answers, and I know
Right.
we're all struggling with that, and not just students, but staff as well. The pandemic was a traumatic time for many people in the Judson community, and helping our students and our staff overcome what they went through, the trauma that they endured, it's a challenge. It's a definite threat to our students' success.
Yeah. Okay, very good. She's doing something over there. This is what it looks like for me, and we'll put these together. And the cabinet members, what was something that you heard that really lined up with what you wrote down? Like just this kind of a team of 15 thing now. Kristen, like anything that's like, you know, like it's like exactly the same.
So Ms. Rodriguez and I said almost the exact same thing. I said the Judson way is a strength, but the Judson way is a
Can
weakness.
be, yeah.
Yeah.
Can keep us stuck.
Absolutely.
And I've heard that we've got to learn how to honor our legacy and design for our future. To like hit that sweet spot on this, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
My biggest, I guess, coalescence is when we talk about school safety, and I don't mean facility, I mean our students safe at school among each other and their teachers, along with the bullying and the discipline. All that keeps coming out to me, because it's from my background, is school climate and culture.
Right.
Like our community culture is so diverse, and then what you said about the diversity of, like how that could almost be a threat, is that we have cultural incongruence.
Yeah.
And so that is what is driving, some of the emotional state. There's a lot of work that needs to be done as far as building relationships and building community. Even though Judson is a phenomenal community, when you get down to the microcosm on every campus, students don't always feel like their teachers care because their teachers have so much to do. The teachers don't feel like their administrators listen to them because they have so much to do.
Right.
Like there's a lot of misunderstandings and just disconnections that we have to work on.
Okay.
I would go back to the communication piece.
Yeah.
I heard it several times. I think that I really don't feel like there's a lack of something. I think it's just the appropriate communication. Are we getting the point to the stakeholders that need it when they need it? We could be better. And then in terms of our financial integrity, Ms. Ryan and I go back and forth, but I'm not as confident that we're as sound as we're in a deficit budget. And for me, I treat it like my house. If I was in a deficit budget at my house, I'd be up all night trying to, cut corners at every turn. So that's a concern.
Well, so just so that they're not exclusive from each other, you can have strong reserves, but if there's deficit budgets against said strong reserves,
Correct.
There's
pretty soon it's not strong anymore,
the
and then
strength
you're like,
of that
yeah, yes, sir.
reserve. Okay, very good. Anything you hear that's the same as the board?
He already mentioned it. We're looking at our fund balance.
Right.
Looking at our deficit.
I forgot your finance, so yeah, duh, yeah.
Think of all of the things that we're, thinking of the fund balance, thinking of the deficit.
Gotcha.
Budget, and then thinking of all of the things that we're talking about that could be opportunities. How do we ensure that we implement or execute anything that we're talking about here today and make it sustainable?
Yep,
So it goes back to the finance.
yeah. Well, so were you, I'm just shocked, happy, sad, mad that there's a green part to the bottom of this scorecard where we're actually going?
I think it's important.
Yeah.
I think we always want to be transparent
That's
about what we're
correct.
doing, and I think that there's an opportunity here to educate the community, to educate our staff about what we're doing.
Very
with,
good.
finance.
That's couldn't have been said better, because this is not probably about doing new things,
Yeah.
the green part.
Those
It's
things
being
need to be
more,
done.
it's being more transparent about the things that we're
communication.
doing, the communication of it. And then I'll plant one more seed so that you all kind of know that, like how big is the Judson ISD budget all in?
240 for our general fund, about 20 for child nutrition, about 60 for our debt service.
Okay, so I'm gonna do the 240 on that one and take the other two buckets out of it. Now, how big is your budget in your department? Like just your department?
In instruction alone?
No, just in, like, in the finance department.
Oh, not that big.
Okay, so but what, 20,000, 30,000, some supplies, some
about
computers, some
50,
50,000?
yes.
All right, so 250 million versus 50,000 is what we're saying, right? My point with that is that all of that other money is being managed by others, not her. And one step that we can take is build the strength, financial strength of all budget managers district-wide. And not just missionary work or, wait, what? Yeah. Okay, but it's not just like pockets of excellence, like let's make a 4-year plan for how budget managers become the best budget managers that they can become. Because I said this and when I taught her, the curriculum says I have to show you the PEMS code for the 19th time. No one knows what the PEM codes are. I mean, you have a manual, and you have a person that you hire, and you have a manual. Well, you have a manual, and you have a person that's hired. This needs to be more like an MBA, less like a PEMS class, because how do we do ROI? How do we determine if this is strategic allocation of resources? Well, we can talk all day long, team of 15. How many budget managers do you have? 50, 60, 70?
Yeah. At least.
Probably, let's say 75.
Yes.
So 75, we're going to have 20 hours of training right here. If those 75 don't get it, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
So it's like, how do we strengthen that 75? We want them to be instructional leaders, don't get me wrong, but we completely ignore their ability to do financial stuff, and they're down there managing $10 to $25 million enterprises. And we just act like as an afterthought, they're supposed to magically somehow have some financial acumen. So that's why I think we try to build out that green part. Sorry, y'all obviously pushed a little button.
No, that was a great point. That was a great point.
Well, I came to the superintendency through the curriculum background and chose to become a CFO because I wanted to learn it. And I'm so glad that I did, because it just like.
Similar path. I was an assistant super for
No
CNI.
way.
And I just.
No way. There's only 2 of us in the state. We're sitting right here together, like no one leaves curriculum to go do the number crunching, but, okay, awesome.
So you're preaching my tune here.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer that we have such opportunities for growth in the area of curriculum. And I'm
Great.
talking about student growth, academic growth. And yes, we can look back 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, but I do believe that you have to put systems in place for growth to happen.
Yeah.
And so part of that retention of teachers that we keep hearing about is building capacity, and building capacity at every level. We can't just stop at the principal. We got to go to the assistant principals. We got to go to the department chairs and the instructional coaches. And I'm not going to get on my soapbox about people that I need in the curriculum, but but I will say that that's the 2 things that really jumped out at me. I'm a firm believer that every kid can, and every kid can grow, but we have to set the system up in order to make it happen.
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
I was excited because I wrote my 2 down, and then as everybody was talking, I was like, oh, I wrote that. Oh, I wrote that too. And oh, everything's kind of connecting. Just want to touch, though, on the staff retention part. There's lots of opportunities there, in, especially when we think about our long-term and our loyal staff that is here. That's really great, but we also have to work on the newer people coming in, and how do we get them to want to stay and be loyal and those kinds of things. So those opportunities for refinement in that area is really going to help with that retention piece for our students, and I think that we're in a good place. And we're in a great opportunity to be able to lay down the foundation for that work with the approval of the reorganization of the department. Thanks.
And Dr. Gibson, let me just say this. Obviously, I'm a big social media person, and so I get memories pop up on my page, and a memory popped up from a conference I attended in 2016 at TASB. And in the photo, there's like 12 people. There's only 2 people left. And that was 8 years ago.
Right.
So as fluid as things are, we plan things, and if we don't have that structure in place,
That's correct.
you have all those folks move on. They
Yeah.
do different things, other jobs, and so that consistency drops off. And at the high level, it can't. We have to be ultra focused on that plan. So it was just really telling.
What you're saying is just so important, and I don't want, this is probably where the cabinet members I'm about to lose them. Like, I feel like I kind of got them and I'm about to lose them. Okay, but this is down the road, my friends. Okay, to the end, Mr. Macias, of what you're saying, these key strategic actions, once they are agreed upon, remember the back and forth between the tactical, districts are following a similar format, or real simple. It's hyperlinked, and when you click on that key strategic action, it takes you to a one-pager of what that means.
Can we hear from Dr. Gosh? We skipped her.
Pardon, I'm so sorry. Because I'm thinking she's helping me, and like she now works for me. Yes, tell me. Yes, Madam Secretary, that's right.
It's funnier than you know, actually. So I actually combined two things. So the one that resonated with me the most was something that actually Ms. Faulkner said, since she, I'm glad she brought it up, and it has to do with the alignment. I think that we have the alignment, but I think we are very poor at communicating how those components fit together.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a huge opportunity for us to repair almost all of our threats and other pieces by making sure that that alignment is where it needs to be, and that we all communicate that alignment in the same way.
Great.
Because we very much live in our own little realm, and a lot of people don't know the other strengths and competencies. I'm technology, so therefore that must be all that I know.
Right.
But yet, if you listen to all the things that I know, there's a whole lot more beyond that. I think you can say the same thing with Nicole. Obviously, Ceci has done curriculum and she's done finance, and so communicating those competencies within that alignment to show how we work together can go a long way to correct that.
So transparency, does it make sense on the hyperlinks, on the key strategic actions? And it's just a one-pager. I'm not talking about, it's like, why are we doing this? What are we doing? And how are we doing it? It's just simple. Then on alignment, at one point, this is when I felt like things were like really good to great. The flywheel, Jim Collins, like the flywheel is going, like you got to get the first revolution, the second revolution. Okay, when we had a standard report for our 4 priorities, and it was a strength, 1 or 2, from each of the 4 priorities, and an opportunity for improvement that we were working on. At all times, the team of 15 were carrying that list in our pocket. So if somebody, or the back of your name, so if somebody asked, no matter where you were, any one of the team of 15, you just have that, and you just, okay, we have 4, we call them glows and grows. So 4 things that, we're glowing about right now, but it was 1 thing from priority 1, 1 thing from priority 2, 1 thing from priority 3, 1 thing from priority 4, and then a grow. What are we looking at? Okay, does that make sense? And then it was just amazing when this team of 15 had that same cue card, and we updated it every quarter. Every quarter, it was just your new talking points. And I remember being at it was either, what's the one that met over here by the Starbucks? No, it's in the hotel. Tri-County.
Yeah.
That's where I was. Like, we were in that. And I just remember I was distracted, which I'm easily distracted, but I was talking to a table, and they asked me to give an update, and I didn't hear them because I'm probably talking to Kevin, I'm punching him because he's, or something. And, and then I look up, or I listen, and our board vice president took the mic, and he's going off of the cue card. And he said, hold on, I've got some. So he pulls out, but it's just our talking points. It's our agreed upon talking points. Why have more people say, that was, like, the way that happened gave me more confidence in SCUC, the fact that, and I turned around and everybody looked at me like, he's gonna snatch the microphone away from Mr. Harrod. And Scott Harrod said, like, do you want it? And I was like, no, I'm gonna go through line to get my food because you got it. And then I just said, Mr. Harrod, what Mr. Harrod said. But, I mean, do you see, like, it was just like we could just, I don't know, it was just that integrated. So typically, scorecard development process and our methodology, and we can customize it anyway, it's just six meetings the way we look at it. 2 board meetings, 2 senior leader meetings. There's going to be several Zooms in between as working on it, and then 2 community meetings. I could make a case for we just did the board, one of the 2 board meetings and one of the 2 senior leader meetings we just did. I can make a case for that. So 2 community meetings left, and then probably 2 more of these sessions. If y'all want to keep them integrated together, which I love doing them as a team of 15, some districts do, some districts don't. I'll Zoom with the cabinet in between as we get real granular about looking into your superintendent search documents, this SWOT. But then what I think I'm hearing is bringing the community in, even though they probably, has it been about a year since they came in for the superintendent search?
It's been under a year.
Almost. I think we kicked that off in January.
Yeah.
And do you have existing, okay, so it's been nearly a
We just
year.
did one a couple of weeks ago. It's called a community brew, where we brought the community in. We could say it's for this purpose and maybe bring more people in, have an opportunity.
Okay, that's great. I just think that generally
It was
speaking.
part of the entry plan.
Gotcha.
And we have.
Right, so you have some existing structures you could combine, and that it doesn't feel like see, I think that's wonderful to do it that way. Do you have a belief, or do you have mission, vision, values?
No, we need those.
Okay, so then, thank you.
Sorry.
Well, she's rolling hot over here, yeah. Okay.
We have it, it's just that
It's
it
time
needs to be.
for a refresh, okay.
Yeah.
So the community, to me, informs this team on mission, vision, and values, and we run a SWOT with them. We run a SWOT, 60 people show up, we put them in 6 groups of 10. We walk out of there with 10 SWOTs from the 10 tables they report out. That is some of the most insightful information we can get, or what are and then what we do, and by the way, if you don't mind, the cabinet has their notes. Can we stack on SWOT? So can we get their notes and stack them up by the board? Well, so I've got a template for this if you'll email me. So strength, weakness, opportunity, threat, board, cabinet, community group 1, community group 2, community group 3. Then we're looking at strengths across like 8 different lenses, weaknesses across 8 different, then that gets real informative into, what's rising to the top here, and then what's an objective, and if this thing's not going to be an objective, it better be right there in those key strategic actions.
And let me ask you, we're talking about stakeholder input, community, but what about our staff?
Yes, I think if you have a staff, thank you for bringing that up, because that's kind of inside this. It's actually step 1 is the superintendent to use a staff advisory, and I might recommend staff advisory and teacher advisory, and run a SWOT with them, basically.
We even have a student advisor.
Okay, and I would say run a SWOT with a student advisory. So do you
Yeah, like
see
we
how?
already have all of those groups, and you can just kick them out, and you have at them, and
Yeah,
let them
so
give
so does that
unbiased
make
info.
sense that student advisory and then staff advisory, teacher advisory, those are the tops of this chart, and then we're running
those are
strength, weakness, opportunity, threat across all of those?
Yeah.
Basically that's where we start.
But is that really where we start? Because we just said we don't have a vision
No, sorry, that's what
I'm saying.
We're gonna run them side by side.
Okay.
So like, we're gonna bring the
Okay.
community group in, and with those other advisories, I'm gonna let the staff just work those. But the way we do the mission and vision and I'm going to make a case for beliefs rather than core values, because they get like really to the heart of the matter. Now, we can pop out some core values, but I've got a process. It's called keywords and phrases. These exercise with advisory groups bog down with wordsmithing. So we lose the vision of what we're trying to accomplish by trying to make it perfect in the English language rather than what are the keywords and phrases that the people just told us that we need to include in it. So I'll coach you guys up on going to those, and then I'll facilitate those community meetings if that's what you want. And then we'll pop out of those with mission, vision, beliefs, and a SWOT, basically.
And Dr. Gibson, in terms of us looking at a timeline, would this be a 30-day timeline for this, or would it be 2 weeks? What would be?
I think, where are we, October?
October 14th.
I think we could have a scorecard ready by 1 February,
By February?
by first day of February.
And the other question is, obviously, we still need to give input to our superintendent, to Dr. Fields, and so January, sort of that timeline. Your opinion would be that we just do a formal assessment, since we've not really established any formal?
So by statute, I think you have 18 months, but I think I would.
We do have 18 months.
Well, until you.
15? 15?
Okay, whatever it is. Well,
Yeah, Green Tabs be 15, and from the date it became interim, so like by January, we just got to knock one out.
Okay,
Like,
so that's exactly where I think that's good. Let's do something.
I just don't have January in my head. January
Right, so
needs to work.
what if I provide you all with 10 components, I think, that are typical entry plan components?
Okay, that's good.
And then that's just the rubric. Now, one of them is going to be, has worked to set a vision for a strategic direction forward. Because that's what you should do in the first year. You should set a vision for a strategic direction forward. But there's some other pieces as well, and I'll give you a typical rubric. And I can do that via email, and you and I can have a conversation, Mr. Macias, afterwards.
Well,
It makes perfect sense. Yes, ma'am.
well, good. That's what I was hoping to ask as well. Colleagues, are you comfortable with that between now and February with that entry level?
And again, I'm new, but I'm a very organized, I need the whole picture, but I need the little steps to get there. But what I see is everybody has the same goals, we just don't have them all down on paper for me to understand. That's what we need to do, is so I can understand what we're doing.
Well, so are you talking about the process?
The process, yeah,
Or this final
like I
product?
said, I've seen everybody comes to the table with their talents, their ideas, and their, where we need to go, where we're driving the car. But along the way, I don't see much. I see a lot of curves and a lot of spinning out, and so I think this is streamlining what we're doing, and now we have the starting line and the finish line.
Okay, I want to thank you, because this is a perfect conclusion. 3 or 4 pages in, I didn't go there at the beginning because we just got into it, and I love that we just got into it. I think we're where we are right now because we just got into it. But what I think I hear you saying, and this really is, now, this is like a chicken or egg debate to me. Do I talk about this before the scorecard, or do I talk about this after the scorecard? So when you're talking about having aligned arrows, by the way, all these arrows that are misaligned up here, as humans, we look at those and we try to, I think, my opinion is we assign a value judgment. We can't help it in our mind. I wonder which one of those is right. I wonder which one of those is wrong. That's what humans do. I think that's part of our fault as humans. We want to assign too much value judgment, back to the cultural competency and things like that, like too much being stuck in like the thing that's in my head. So the assumption here is that none of these actors are working maliciously. They're just getting after it. They're just working hard. But towards what? To what end? That's exactly right. So I believe firmly that the only way to get from 1 to 2, well, it's pretty easy to get from 1 to 2. And you could do it with a strategic plan that's a poster on the wall. You could argue that you could get right out of 1 to 2. You cannot get to 3 and 4 without a performance management system.
Correct.
It has to be the stuff we talk about. We all stay in our lane, that we have good conversations. I'm in the strategic role. I'm going to stay in the strategic role, but I'm ready for a great conversation about the scorecard, and I want to hear the tactical team giving the report of where we are. And I think maybe we need to add attendance to that measurement. So I think I'm going to listen, but then I might ask next month that we have attendance. That's staying in the strategic role. But then now we're getting to that harmony between, that's what I like to call the team of 15. The team of 15 can implement this, and you got a shot. Dr. Fields, let's do this. Would you mind reading stage 1? You see the
I'd be happy to. Stage 1 is reacting to the problems.
yeah, and then read the work as characterized.
Work is characterized by activities rather than by process, and they are largely responsive to immediate needs or problems. Goals are poorly defined.
Okay, now go down to stage 4, bottom of the page.
The difference would be processes are characterized by repeatable steps that are regularly evaluated for change and improvement in collaboration with other affected units. The organization seeks and achieves efficiencies across units through analysis, innovation, and sharing of information and knowledge. Process and measures track progress on key strategic and sustainable goals.
Hear the difference between those?
Reactive, proactive.
Yeah.
But I'd like to clarify, though, but even on both of them, it's not that the people are intentionally doing the wrong, you know what I'm
That's
saying? If we
correct.
could just assume positive intent, even when you got people running in a bunch of different, because they're working real hard, it just
everybody's
running in a
working
different
hard.
direction.
No, yeah,
It's
no
just-
one's,
it's not.
no one's questioning that at all. No one's
Well, but
questioning that
people
at all.
do, maybe not
I'm
at
not.
this table, but people do.
Everybody's, well, the
But
community.
And how
That's
do
why we're
we-
fixing it.
And how do we get better about our narrative if we don't have alignment to align our narrative to? How do we get better about strategic allocation of resources and conducting ROI if we don't know exactly what we're trying to accomplish? Do y'all want me to keep going here? It's just how do you, unless you have,
Right.
unless you have this, you've got this. And everybody's working hard, but towards what? But we don't know where we're going. Okay. If everybody's good, I'm good right there, and
I think I'm hearing, Dr. Fields, that you feel that that's been the feedback. That
I do. I can tell you that when I read some of the comments on Facebook, when I hear some of the statements that are made in cabinet or in the boardroom, I get the sense sometimes that we're just not assuming positive intent and that there's something
nefarious.
behind the action. And it's really not that way. When you actually sit down and talk to the person, they're just, I didn't know. Or I thought I was really working really hard. Almost to a sense of, they don't even, there's an emotional release of, I really thought I was getting it done over here. And I was running in the other direction. I hope I'm making sense right now. But when I talk to people, I can just really get the sense that they feel like I thought we were really working hard. And we're just not aligned with what it is that we all say that we're going to do. This is going to help so much.
I was going to say, we did talk about trust and community and that sentiment. So we obviously have work to do in that area, because I do believe we are doing the work, but we also have to rebuild trust. And there will always be people that are concerned about if we're doing our due diligence. And as elected officials, we all know, we hear from our community about what is significant, what is important. And we're continuing to rebuild trust, and I believe that we will through this process as well.
in the packet, thank you, Mr. Macias, because that's a really good closing point. And don't just take the packet with you, but probably a good next step for the board, while the senior leader team works on strategy, there is self-analysis tool in there on measuring team trust and a self-analysis tool in there on measuring good governance, then I would like to propose something for the board to ruminate on. I'm not telling you this is what you need to do, but the board goals become your goals to build trust and to become a better board through good governance related to those self-analyses. Then you oversee the district's goals that are going to align to the district improvement plan, that are going to align to the superintendent appraisal instrument, and we're going to have a performance management system for the board to monitor that, if that makes sense. And that'll be then, I said there's another board meeting like that. That's the stuff we get into at the other board meeting.
Well, very good. So I know that we want to close. Are there any final remarks from my colleagues before I adjourn? Staff, would you like to say anything?
I would. Thank you, guys. I feel so much better, man. I really do. This was a great day for me. So thank you guys so much.
And I wanted to just echo that in closing too. We appreciate your candor, this conversation. It is definitely the direction, and I think I feel hopeful in terms of what we need to develop. And
What's our next step?
Our next step.
I'm going to send the 10, well, I'm going to send you a list of doing a superintendent evaluation based on an entry plan and what a rubric of the things you would typically look for during the first year of a superintendent's. And then, Dr. Fields, I'll probably get with you. I thought about this. If this really covered the first 2 meetings, then I'm just saying this, there's no charge for this. This charge for this is rolled into that 6th meeting, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm only going to charge for 4 more because I think we just got the first 2 done. But to your question, we'll map out what we just accomplished and then what those other 4 meetings are. And then by 1 February, to your earlier question, I think we can be sitting right here with a draft of the Judson scorecard, kind of doing our final analysis and questions, and I think we could even get to lead measures and have some initial conversation on lag measures.
Nice.
Well, very good. Well, then, thank you for your time, staff. Dr. Fields, colleagues, thank you. We are officially adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate it.
You're welcome. If we can see it.